Hi guys. Tonight we drift together into a place where the heat presses against your skin, even after the sun drops behind the dunes, where the river glows in dim silver, and where an entire civilization figures out how to sleep in temperatures that hover around 120 degrees Fahrenheit. You stand on the edge of ancient Thebes, feeling grains of warm dust under your sandals and watching the shadows settle over mud-brick walls. The air still feels heavy enough to chew, and you probably will not survive this without guidance from people who handled this heat thousands of years before your air-conditioned world ever existed. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you want, post your location and the local time wherever you are. Now, dim the lights, and let your imagination step fully into the night. You trudge down a narrow street that still radiates stored sun, each wall giving back heat like a sleeping cat curled against your hip. Ancient Egyptians lived in what might be one of the hottest habitable environments on Earth, and you feel it pressing at your lungs. A very mainstream historical fact reminds you of this reality. Egypt receives almost no rainfall, which means the land bakes under relentless sun 5,000 years straight. But here, in the thick of it, people manage to rest, dream, and wake, ready for another day of work. It still feels impossible. That is exactly why you are here, letting the nighttime wrap around your shoulders as if it were a blanket made of warm, dry air. Your first steps through this world show you how heat shapes every choice you make. You feel sweat trickle slowly down your spine despite the late hour. To your left, a woman closes a wooden shutter carved with simple geometric shapes. She is not blocking out light so much as coaxing cross breezes. Historians still argue whether most homes relied more on intentional airflow design or simply on the thickness of their walls for nighttime cooling. Whatever the truth, the effort is deliberate. You watch her wedge a clay jar near the window, hoping the water inside will evaporate just enough to chill the breeze that slips in. You walk farther, noticing the surface beneath your feet shift from packed earth to dust-soft sand. The sound of your own footsteps grows muffled. There is something wonderfully calming about the way nighttime in Egypt folds the day into quiet simplicity. People slow down, animals settle, and the sky stretches from horizon to horizon like a bowl of crushed blue stone. You feel small but safe, as if someone has lowered a gigantic curtain of cool intention across the land. A quirky little tidbit drifts into your mind as you breathe in the faint scent of date palms. Some Egyptians reportedly used a mixture of natron and water to clean themselves before resting, thinking the mineral would help draw heat away from the body. Whether it worked or not, you can imagine the gentle grit against your skin, like a quick desert spa treatment before bedtime. You picture yourself rubbing it along your forearms, watching little clouds of dust rise in the dark. The Nile hums nearby, not loudly but with that soft suggestion of movement that soothes your nerves. You feel the faintest hint of cooler air drifting from its direction. This is the secret everyone depends on. Even when the day scorches you like an open oven, the river always carries a whisper of relief. Children run toward it, chasing the thought of cooler breezes. Fishermen pull up the last nets of the day. You overhear cheerful conversation blending with frog calls in the reeds. For a moment, you almost forget the temperature. As you continue walking, you reach a small courtyard open to the sky, where a family prepares for sleep. The courtyard floor feels warm under your feet, but not unbearable. A boy lies on a low stool made from palm ribs, letting the night air reach his back. His mother spreads a linen cloth over a mat, smoothing it with habitual precision. Linen is the hero of this world. Light, breathable, and woven from flax grown near the Nile, it saves you from heat that would otherwise swallow you whole. You brush your fingers over the edge of the cloth and feel the pleasant crispness. You settle yourself near a mud-brick wall and lean back. Surprisingly, the wall no longer burns your skin. It has finally exhaled the worst of the day, allowing the night to take over. You sense that this is why these walls exist. Thick, layered, and porous, mud brick has a natural insulation effect. During the day it absorbs heat, At night it releases it slowly, so slowly that you can almost predict the comfortable moment when the balance tips and the coolness wins out. It becomes part of the rhythm around you. A stray cat strolls past, tail flicking with disinterest. It pauses to stare at you as though wondering why a modern traveler stands here blinking at the dark. You hear distant laughter from another roof, light and drifting like smoke. People often slept on their rooftops, but you will climb up there later. For now you remain at ground level, letting the environment wrap around you in this late evening calm. You close your eyes briefly. The air vibrates with tiny textures. Insects hum beyond your reach. A potter finishes storing his tools for the night. Somewhere close by, someone fans glowing embers to keep a slow-cooking pot warm until morning. The mixture of scents, from lightly charred barley to cool river water, feels grounding. You take another deep breath and realize that Egyptians did not fight the heat, they danced with it. They adjusted their bodies, their homes, their routines, and even their dreams around it. A donkey brays once, loud and echoing. It startles a group of pigeons from a nearby roof. Their wings flutter like paper streamers caught in a breeze. You smile at the sound. Noise at night in this world is not intrusive. It is almost melodic, the signature of a living environment that teaches you to sleep despite heat, not in denial of it. You lean your head back again and let your shoulders drop. The sky grows darker, and stars appear one by one. They shimmer above you, perfectly steady in the dry atmosphere. You feel as though you can almost reach them. The cool of night has begun its slow approach, sliding over the land with deliberate patience. It is nowhere near cold, not even comfortable by your modern standards, but in this heat-choked world even a small decrease feels like a blessing. You take another slow, easy breath. Your body adjusts. Your thoughts settle. You understand now why Egyptians shaped their evenings the way they did. It was not simply survival. It was ritual. A patient surrender to the rhythm of the desert, the river, and the sky. You stay there a few more moments, listening, breathing, preparing to follow them deeper into their nighttime world. You ease yourself upward and begin walking along a narrow passage that leads deeper into the cluster of homes. The heat still clings to you, but it feels different now. Less aggressive, more like a warm blanket that someone forgot to shake out. Ahead, you enter a quiet residential area where mud brick homes rest under the moonlight like gentle giants. Their thick walls glow with a faint sandy hue, each block shaped by human hands and sun-dried with patience. You trail your fingertips along one of these walls and notice how surprisingly cool it feels. Not cold, just calm. The surface has finally given up its daytime burden and begun to breathe. You step back and take in the simple architecture. Mud brick homes do not try to outsmart the heat with complex tricks. They simply exist in harmony with the desert, absorbing the sun by day and releasing it at night. A mainstream historical fact floats into your mind as you look. Mud brick was the primary building material for ordinary Egyptians for thousands of years, created by mixing Nile silt, straw, and water, before shaping it into blocks that hardened under the relentless sun. That simple formula made homes that were not just sturdy, but also naturally insulating. You stand there appreciating how well they worked long before the invention of climate control. But there is something more subtle happening here. You lean in, pressing your palm to one of the walls again. The surface feels slightly textured, almost rough, like a dense pressed sponge. It allows air to move through it in tiny amounts, creating a natural cooling effect. Ancient builders might not have described it in scientific terms, but they understood it in their bones. Many modern people would not believe it until they feel it for themselves. That is exactly what you are doing now, letting your hand rest on a technology that is both humble and brilliant. A quirky little tidbit comes to mind while you stand there. Some Egyptians believed that adding a small amount of leftover beer mash into mud brick mixtures gave the bricks better durability. You smile at the thought. Beer, already a staple drink, possibly also a secret ingredient in the walls that sheltered them from heat. You imagine a worker dropping a bit of fermented grain into the muck and shrugging with confidence, convinced it made things better. Whether it did or not, the idea charms you. You move toward a small doorway where faint lamplight flickers. Peeking inside, you see a home designed around airflow. The interior is dim and quiet. A simple wooden table rests near the wall. A stack of pottery jars sits in an alcove. The space feels unexpectedly spacious despite low ceilings. You step inside and immediately notice how the temperature shifts. It is still warm but significantly less suffocating. The mud brick walls shape the air into gentle currents. You feel them move across your arms like invisible river water. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptian homes were intentionally engineered to maximize nighttime breezes or whether the cooling benefits of mud brick were simply a lucky byproduct of available materials. As you move deeper inside, you sense it was probably both. People here lived close to the land for so long that their design instincts were shaped by experience rather than theory. Whatever the debate, the comfort speaks for itself. You close your eyes for a moment and breathe in. The air smells faintly of clay, old wood, and a bit of herbs hanging to dry near the ceiling. A woman tends a small lamp in the corner, adjusting the wick until the flame shrinks to a tiny golden bead. She barely notices you. Her motions are practiced and slow. The flame casts soft shadows across the room. That dim glow helps guide your gaze toward the ceiling where palm beams support the roof. The beams are old but sturdy, laid in overlapping patterns that trap heat higher up while allowing cooled air to settle closer to where people rest. You admire how intentionally everything fits together. No wasted effort, no unnecessary decoration, just purposeful comfort. You wander toward the back of the room where a small window sits high on the wall. It is narrow enough to keep out harsh sun but wide enough to catch wind. The breeze that slips through feels like a secret gift from the river. You place your face near the opening and inhale. The air is cooler here, not cold, but refreshing in a way that surprises you. It carries the faint scent of tamarisk trees and river mud. You imagine families sitting beneath this window during the hottest evenings, waiting for the moment the air shifts from painfully warm to tolerably soft. Looking around, you notice how the interior layout encourages airflow. There are no heavy dividers, only open spaces that guide movement. Beds and mats sit low to the ground because warm air rises. Sleeping closer to the floor makes the night easier to endure. You picture yourself lying there, feeling gentle breezes slide across the room as the thick walls work their slow magic. A cat curls up near a jar of water. You watch its chest rise and fall. Even animals seem to understand the logic of these homes. They gravitate toward the coolest corners as though following an instinctive blueprint. You walk near the jars and lift one slightly. The surface feels cool. Not dramatically, but noticeably. As water inside evaporates, it removes warmth from the surrounding air. The jar sweats the way your skin does, and the result helps you survive. You continue moving through the space, appreciating how completely the home interacts with the climate. You see baskets woven from reeds stacked neatly in the corner, each holding small personal items. You smell ground grain stored for tomorrow's bread. You hear distant laughter drifting from somewhere outside, mixed with the call of a night bird perched on a roof. The whole house feels alive but peaceful, and your body slowly settles into its rhythm. Outside, the night deepens. You step through the doorway into the open air again. The transition feels gentle, almost seamless. Warm air brushes your cheeks. A slight breeze stirs your linen clothing. You glance back at the home and understand why mud brick remained essential for centuries. It is not just a wall. It is a partner to the climate, adjusting itself to the sun and the night, offering protection in the simplest possible way. You walk along the outer wall, letting your hand trail across the surface again. It feels cooler now, smoother, more inviting. You think about modern construction and laugh quietly to yourself. In a world crowded with machines and artificial cooling systems, sometimes the most effective solution is one made from dirt, straw, and sunlight. You pause near a corner where the home meets another. The narrow gap between them funnels air like a natural wind tunnel. You step into it and feel a surprising burst of cooler movement across your neck. It makes you sigh with relief. You can imagine ancient families using these little architectural quirks to catch comfort on the worst nights. You stay there a moment, enjoying the breeze, listening to the murmur of distant voices, and feeling your body relax. The mud brick around you holds the memory of 1,000 nights just like this one. You let yourself drift with that thought, sinking deeper into the quiet calm of an Egyptian evening where homes do more than shelter. They breathe with you. You leave the narrow passage behind and make your way toward a cluster of staircases that rise along the exterior walls of nearby homes. They look almost improvised at first glance, simple steps carved into or built against mud brick structures. But as you climb the first one, you realize how intentional the layout feels. The air grows a little lighter with each step upward, as if you are slowly escaping the grip of heat that lingers closer to the ground. You reach the top, and the world opens wide. A flat Egyptian rooftop at night feels like an entirely new landscape. You step onto the surface and feel the texture under your feet, a mixture of packed clay, woven mats, and smooth stones. The roof is open to the sky, framed only by a low parapet wall that keeps sleepy wanderers from tumbling off in the dark. Up here, the breeze finds you more easily, brushing your cheeks with a softness that feels almost intimate. It makes you close your eyes for a moment, letting the relief trickle into your muscles. You look around and notice that rooftop life is not an afterthought but a nightly ritual. A mainstream historical fact surfaces as you glance across the rooftops. Many Egyptians, especially during the hottest months, slept outside more often than inside because the temperature at roof level dropped faster and absorbed the night breeze more effectively. It was more than preference. For many families, this was simply the only way to survive nights that refused to cool down. The rooftop next to you holds a small family quietly preparing for rest. A father unrolls a large woven mat, tapping it gently to shake away dust. A girl arranges pottery jars at the roof's edge to let them catch the coolest possible breeze. A mother lifts a thin linen cloth, airing it out slowly before laying it across the mat. Their movements are almost ceremonial, calming in their repetition. You feel yourself growing sleepy just watching them organize the simple comfort of the night. Your eyes wander upward, tracing the endless spread of the sky. Stars sharpen in the dry atmosphere, forming brilliant patterns that seem to hover closer than they do anywhere else on Earth. The moon sits low, glowing softly, almost shy behind a veil of milky air. The entire sky feels like a dome resting gently over these rooftops, protecting everyone beneath it. You take a breath and feel the coolness of night settle deeper into your chest. The difference is subtle but real, and it makes you understand why these rooftops become sanctuaries during brutal summers. You walk slowly across the flat surface, letting the cooler wind follow you. A quirky tidbit pops into your mind while you explore. Some Egyptians believed that sleeping under the open sky allowed divine breaths to wash over the soul at night, offering protection and sometimes even lucky dreams. Whether the belief came from spiritual tradition or the simple bliss of cooler air, you do not know. But as you look up at the shimmering sky, you feel something almost sacred in the quiet. You crouch beside a small clay pot perched near the parapet. Thin lines run along its sides, and the lid is made of woven palm fibers. You lift it slightly and find that inside rests a small bundle of herbs. The scent rises gently, a blend of mint and dried lotus petals. Someone placed it here not for decoration, but to catch the breeze and scent the air around their sleeping space. You take another deep breath as the aroma wraps you in freshness. It feels soothing, like a personal nighttime ritual passed down quietly through generations. You turn toward the edge of the rooftop and look down into the street you walked earlier. From this height, everything appears gentler. The glow of small lamps flickers at the edges of narrow alleys. A couple of people wander by, their shapes elongated by shadows. The murmur of nighttime conversation slips upward in threads of sound, almost musical. The noise does not intrude. It comforts. You lean your elbows on the low parapet and let the scene wash over you, feeling your heartbeat slow in response to the calm. You take your first step toward a corner where a raised sleeping platform sits. Many families built these surfaces to lift themselves slightly off the rooftop floor, allowing breezes to pass underneath. Warm air rises. Cooler air drifts lower. The platform takes advantage of that natural exchange. You lie down for a moment, letting your body stretch across the mat. The surface feels firm but welcoming. A light breeze sweeps across your arm. It cools your skin faster than you expect. You sigh deeply. A scholarly debate drifts into your mind as you continue resting there. Historians still argue whether rooftop sleeping was most common among poorer households who lacked inner rooms, or whether it was simply a cultural habit enjoyed across classes. The evidence goes both ways. Some homes had elaborate interior courtyards meant for heat relief. Others depended entirely on rooftops for breathable sleep. As you look across the roofs now, filled with families settling in, it becomes clear that the truth probably lived somewhere in the middle. You rise once more and wander toward another cluster of rooftops connected by small wooden ladders. You climb down one ladder and up another, letting yourself move between homes the way neighbors might. Here you find a rooftop shaded partially by a simple structure made of palm branches tied together. The shade does not block the moonlight entirely, just softens it. The air beneath feels even cooler. You slip under the shelter and smile as the breeze becomes more concentrated in this small space. A boy sleeping nearby turns on his mat, mumbling softly. His family rests around him, each person stretched comfortably beneath the sky. You notice small clay jars placed near each sleeper, their surfaces moist with evaporated water. Even on rooftops, they use every trick available to coax a little more coolness into the night. You pause at the center of this space and stand quietly. The night air hums around you. Crickets sing from distant grasses. A donkey brays far away, sounding almost sleepy itself. A pot clinks somewhere below as someone closes their home for the night. You feel incredibly present in this moment. Ancient rooftops are calm, patient places where families create comfort against overwhelming heat. You move again, exploring more of the rooftop world. You notice woven screens attached to parapets, adjustable enough to block wind or redirect it. You see shallow bowls filled with water placed strategically to invite cooling evaporation. You spot a cluster of baskets filled with figs, likely set out to dry under the day's sun, and now resting in the night's calm. You touch one. The skin feels leathery and warm. The scent clings to your fingers. You continue walking until you reach the last rooftop on this row. Here the view stretches toward the Nile. You lean forward, hands on the parapet, and watch how moonlight dances on the river surface. The breeze that comes from the water feels colder, like someone pressed a chilled cloth against your skin. You understand now why many families angled their sleeping spots toward river-facing edges. Even a small shift in direction could turn a suffocating night into a bearable one. You close your eyes once more and let the rooftop air thread around you. You inhale the scents, hear the peaceful rhythm of the night, and feel the way the environment balances warmth and coolness. Everything on these rooftops has a purpose. Nothing here is decorative excess. It is function shaped by survival, turned into ritual through repetition, and made beautiful through simplicity. You settle into one quiet corner near a mat still warm from earlier sun. You lie back, arms resting at your sides, breathing the night air. You let time stretch. Seconds melt. The rooftop feels like a floating island in a sea of shifting temperature. It carries both the memory of day heat and the promise of cooler hours ahead. You understand why Egyptians returned here nightly with the same certainty that you return to your bed. The rooftops held them, protected them, cooled them, cradled them under a sky that always glimmered with silent company. And now, as you prepare to rise and continue deeper into the night, you carry that understanding with you. You feel a growing intimacy with the rhythms of Egyptian evenings, a closeness that comes from experiencing their world step by step. The rooftops gave you that gift, inviting you into their quiet realm of moonlight, airflow, and whispered dreams. You step down from the rooftop world and return to the street where shadows deepen and the night settles into a thicker hush. You move toward an open courtyard behind a cluster of modest homes, following the soft rustle of palm fronds. The air shifts again. The breeze passing through this area feels filtered, softened, almost as if it has been brushed clean. You step inside and discover the secret. Overhead, woven palm leaves create a canopy that casts a lace of shadows across the ground, shaping the temperature in a quiet and clever way. The canopy is not a tight roof, but a loose weave of fronds tied with fiber string. Moonlight trickles through, forming thin, glowing stripes. A light wind brushes the leaves and makes them whisper. The texture of the air underneath feels noticeably gentler. You inhale and sense the faint smell of dried palm. Earthy and warm, but somehow calming. You crouch beneath the structure and run your fingers over the woven pattern. Each fiber is rough to the touch but flexible enough to bend and sway. Near the center of the courtyard, a family prepares their nighttime resting space. A pair of children stretch out a reed mat under the canopy, while their grandmother carefully places a weight along each corner so it does not shift in the night breeze. A father props up a small wooden rack against a post. It is meant to hold thin fabric so the airflow moves across it more easily. You watch them work and see how natural this arrangement feels, more like a familiar seasonal habit than an experiment in cooling. You take a seat on a low stool near a stone bench. The air passes gently across your face. A commonly cited detail from Egyptian daily life explains the logic perfectly. Palm leaves were among the most widely used natural materials for creating shade because they allowed partial airflow while still dimming harsh light. You can feel the truth of that now. The canopy above you does not trap heat. It breaks it. That slight interruption is enough to lower the temperature beneath it. You lean back and tilt your head upward. The leaves ripple softly, creating a faint rustling that soothes the mind. You imagine an Egyptian child falling asleep to that exact sound, lulled the same way modern people drift off to rain recordings. Your eyes drift across the courtyard and notice bundles of fresh fronds stacked near the wall. Each bundle is tied with rope made from date palm fibers. A young woman sorts them by size, selecting the longest pieces for weaving and the smaller ones for patching worn areas of older canopies. As the family continues their routine, you feel the atmosphere shifting into something peaceful. A mild breeze pushes through the leaves again. You take note of how the fronds flex with the wind rather than resisting it. That gentle movement lets the air flow in a rhythm that feels almost intentional. You step closer to the canopy and gently push one of the woven panels. The entire section sways lightly, and the sound of rustling layers your senses in tranquility. A small story preserved in folk tradition hints at another use of the palm leaf weave. People believed that hanging a handful of fronds with the ends twisted inward helped deter bothersome insects during the hottest nights. The idea might seem odd to you, but as you watch the leaves flutter, you can imagine how the shape and movement might disrupt small pests. Whether the belief was scientific or simply passed down through generations, it adds charm to the scene. Beyond the courtyard wall, you hear murmured conversation from another home. A mother sings gently to her baby. A group of older men debate something in low tones. Their voices ebb and flow with the breeze, blending into the soft texture of the night. You walk toward the corner of the courtyard, where a clay pot sits elevated on two stones. Cool water drips slowly from a crack near the top and gathers in a shallow dish. The scent of water in warm air carries a freshness you find unexpectedly comforting. You reach upward and grip one of the supporting posts of the canopy. It is smoother than you expect, polished by years of hands tightening rope and adjusting the weave. You run your fingers along the post and imagine how many families have relied on structures like this to endure scorching weather. It is a simple design, yet profoundly effective. You sit again and feel how the shade transforms the entire courtyard into a place where breath comes easier. As you watch the shadows sway across the ground, a debate from the academic world drifts through your thoughts. Several researchers disagree on the primary purpose of these courtyard canopies. Some argue they served mainly as social gathering spaces that happened to cool the area. Others believe they were deliberately engineered as part of a passive cooling system that extended domestic comfort. The evidence can be interpreted from different angles, and you can easily see why. Standing here, you feel both interpretations at once. You rise slowly and wander toward a side nook where a pair of woven screens lean against the wall. You lift one and notice the pattern. The weave is tight enough to block harsh light but spaced so air still flows through. You hold it up to your face and peek through the gaps. The outside world appears in fragments, like tiny lenses. You imagine someone adjusting these screens to manage breezes at different times of night. You slide your fingers over the edges and admire the craftsmanship. A clay lantern nearby spills a warm glow across the mat. Its flame flickers as a breeze brushes against it. The grandmother of the family moves to cup the lantern with her hand and then adjusts a small clay guard around the base so the wind does not snuff it out again. The flame steadies. She turns and gives a satisfied nod. Her motions speak of generations of experience, of quiet knowledge that grows from living intimately with the environment. You walk deeper into the courtyard and find a young boy braiding thin strips of palm. He sits cross-legged, weaving without looking as though his hands know the pattern better than his eyes do. When he hears you approach, he looks up and gives a shy smile. The strip in his hands slowly grows into a long braid that will eventually become part of a mat or shade panel. You kneel near him and watch the technique. Over-under, pull tight, twist, repeat. The motion looks hypnotic. Nearby, the father crouches beside a shallow basin filled with water. He dips a handful of fronds into it and lifts them again. Dampening the leaves before weaving makes them more flexible. You watch droplets fall from the ends and splash onto the ground. The scent rises again, fresh and earthy. You place your hand near the basin and feel the faint coolness emanating from it. As you stroll around the courtyard, the canopy overhead becomes the heartbeat of the place. Every gust of wind, every shift of the fronds, every subtle change in shadow shapes your movement. The more time you spend under it, the more you understand how deeply it influences comfort. It is not only shade for the day, but a cooling net for the night. Good is all I'm van Vikwana, you imagine someone saying. Let the wind do its part. In this world where direct sun is merciless and nights can cling to the memory of heat, shade structures like this allow families to breathe. They soften the transition from day to night and create small pockets of relief. You wander toward the entrance of the courtyard again. The air outside feels harsher, warmer, almost dense compared to the gentle flow beneath the fronds. You stand there a moment, letting the difference wash over you. The courtyard canopy creates a microclimate within the larger landscape, and you marvel at how effective simple organic materials can be. Fireflies flicker near the far wall, tiny dots of gold drifting above the ground. A child chases one, giggling quietly before losing it in the shadows. You watch the tiny light disappear between the fronds, swallowed by the soft darkness. You take one more slow walk around the space, letting the shade, the breeze, and the movement of the leaves fade into your senses. It feels like a cocoon, a protective cradle of texture and sound. You stay until your body fully adapts to the gentle coolness here. Only then do you step back toward the open night, carrying the memory of this woven shelter with you. You slip out of the shaded courtyard and drift toward a row of small work areas behind several homes, guided only by the faint clink of pottery and the smell of wet clay. The night air thickens again, warm on your skin, but you sense another kind of coolness waiting somewhere ahead. You follow the path until you reach a dimly lit corner where several large clay jars stand grouped together like quiet guardians. Their surfaces glisten with a soft sheen. When you step closer, you realize they are damp, not because anyone poured water onto them, but because the jars themselves are gently exhaling moisture, letting tiny droplets form and vanish into the warm air. You move nearer and touch one. The clay feels cool against your fingertips, cooler than you expect in this heat. That slight chill travels instantly through your skin, and you understand why Egyptians trusted these vessels so much. They are not meant just for storage. They breathe, and in breathing, they cool the air around them. You walk around the cluster, noticing how some jars appear slightly darker than others. Their surfaces absorb water from within and push it outward through microscopic pores. As the moisture evaporates, the surrounding air loses heat. Without planning on it, you step closer and inhale. The scent is subtle but refreshing, like a whisper of river mud mixed with mineral dust. A practical detail from ancient life comes to mind. Clay jars made with specific ratios of Nile silt were prized because they created stronger, evaporative cooling. Families often requested certain potters who had a reputation for producing jars that stayed cooler longer. You trail your fingers across one jar's ridge, feeling its slightly uneven texture. Each vessel was shaped by hand, pressed and smoothed and tapped until it stood solid in the sun. You glance at a potter seated nearby, his back hunched as he polishes the rim of a half-finished jar. His movements are slow, rhythmic, meditative. He dips a cloth into water and wipes carefully along the edge. Cool droplets fall to the ground and vanish instantly. You study the craftsman, curious. He notices your interest and gestures toward another jar. When he taps the side of it with his knuckles, you hear a clear, hollow tone that vibrates briefly through the night air. That sound tells him the jar has dried evenly. You imagine potters across Egypt listening for similar tones each evening, judging the readiness of their creations not by sight but by resonance. You lean closer to a jar that has a small opening covered with cloth. The cloth is tied down with a thin rope made from twisted fibers. You lift the edge gently and peer inside. The water reflects the moonlight in a soft, rippled glow. The surface looks surprisingly cool. You dip a fingertip into it and exhale softly at the temperature. It is not cold the way your modern refrigerator chills water, but it is noticeably cooler than the air around you. The potter nods as though to say he knew you would be surprised. A tale often retold by modern interpreters of ancient life mentions that some Egyptians liked to place small figurines of protective spirits beside their water jars at night, believing the figures encouraged the water to stay fresh. Whether rooted in superstition or simple comfort, the image charms you. You scan the nearby jars and smile when you spot a tiny clay amulet shaped like a crocodile resting at the base of one vessel. Its mouth is open, and its carved eyes gleam faintly in the lantern glow. The potter finishes his work and steps aside, stretching his back with a soft groan. He wipes sweat from his forehead with a cloth. Even now, long after sunset, the heat clings stubbornly to everything. Yet here beside these jars the air feels a little kinder. You can sense the difference each time the wind passes. It touches your skin with a delicate coolness, as if brushed through a translucent filter. You step closer to let the sensation spread along your arms. A gentle hum floats through the night as a pair of young women approach, carrying small cups. They fill each cup from the coolest jar and sit together on a low platform, sipping slowly. Their laughter is soft, like the clinking of tiny bells. You notice how they instinctively place themselves on the windward side of the jars, letting evaporation do its work. You settle onto a nearby stool, letting your gaze wander across the scene. Somewhere in a distant workshop, a group of researchers today might argue about the true cooling capacity of these vessels. Certain scholars think these jars were mostly for storing water and cooling. It was a fortunate side effect. Others believe the design was deliberately optimized for nighttime comfort. As you stand here watching families gather around them, enjoying the chilled air, the debate almost feels irrelevant. Whether intentional or accidental, the jars help people survive. You take a closer look at the shapes around you. Some jars are tall with narrow necks. Others are wide and round like sleeping animals. Their curves have a logic to them. Narrow necks, slow evaporation just enough to preserve water, while wider surfaces increase the cooling effect. You run a hand along a broad jar and feel the reassuring steadiness of its form. The clay is thick enough to stay strong but porous enough to breathe. As you explore the area, you notice a small pit near the wall, where broken pottery shards are scattered. You crouch down and lift one shard. The texture feels rougher than the intact jars. This piece likely cracked during drying or baking in the sun. The potter must have discarded it without a second thought. Yet even in its brokenness, the shard carries the memory of the Nile's mud, shaped by human hands and hardened under a sky that knows only heat. You rise again and follow the movement of the night. The air shifts. A breeze brushes through, cool and delicate. You close your eyes and feel it move across your face. You let the sensation pool in your chest. These jars create pockets of coolness that ripple outward in almost imperceptible waves. They turn oppressive heat into something tolerable, something you can breathe without struggle. Nearby, a young boy dips a cloth into the cool water and wrings it out over his arms. He sighs in relief. His mother smiles and hands him another cloth. You watch them and feel a subtle longing, an appreciation for the simplicity of their comfort. No machines, no electricity, just clay, water, and wind working together. You walk around the jars again, slow and observant. You notice condensation gathering on the underside of one cloth lid. A droplet forms, swells, then falls quietly into the vessel. That tiny sound might escape unnoticed by most, but you hear it clearly in the quiet night. It is like a heartbeat, a rhythm that repeats endlessly through long summers, keeping families cool enough to rest. A trio of men arrives, carrying baskets filled with freshly drawn water from the river. They pour the water into several jars, filling them to different levels. You observe how the jars darken as the moisture begins its slow outward journey. The men speak quietly among themselves, voices blending with the whisper of wind. Their work is simple, steady, purposeful. You step aside and watch as moonlight glints off the surfaces of the jars. Not bright, but soft, almost tender. The scene feels ancient and eternal at the same time. You linger near one jar and place both hands against it. The coolness spreads through your palms. You imagine sleeping beside it, letting its evaporative breath calm your body until the heat finally loosens its grip. You stand quietly for a long moment, absorbing the textures, the sounds, the scents of this place. You feel the air growing steadier, cooler, easier to inhale. You sense the deep ingenuity in this simple technology. Clay, shaped by water and sun, becomes a tool capable of bending the temperature. That realization settles inside you like a stone dropping gently into still water. Eventually you step back, ready to continue your journey deeper into the Egyptian night. The jars remain behind you, faintly glistening, quietly breathing, patiently cooling anyone who seeks a moment of relief. You carry their gentle chill with you as you walk away, feeling your body softened by the cool grace they offer. You leave the cool hum of the water jars and wander toward a quieter part of the settlement where small linen bundles hang from wooden frames. Their pale shapes sway gently in the faint breeze, almost like soft, ghostly lanterns. You draw closer and instantly notice the subtle change in the air. It carries the clean, crisp scent of freshly washed cloth, mingled with the faint sweetness of flax. The fragrance relaxes your shoulders before you even understand why. You step beneath one of the frames and touch a hanging linen tunic. The fabric feels feather-light between your fingers, smoother than you expected, almost silky despite its coarse appearance. Egyptians adored linen for reasons that become very clear the moment you handle it. Even a thin piece of linen has a remarkable ability to breathe, to release body heat instead of trapping it. You rub the cloth slowly, appreciating its coolness. A detail commonly highlighted by historians about daily Egyptian life comes to mind as you examine the fabric. Linen was not just the most common textile here, it was considered essential for surviving the climate. The flax used to make it flourish in the moist soil near the Nile, giving Egyptians steady access to material that turned into garments suited perfectly to harsh summers. You imagine workers harvesting tall stalks of flax, peeling fibers, soaking them, beating them gently until they softened into thread. Every part of that process existed to help bodies cope with heat that felt almost unreasonable. You shift to the next garment and lift it by the hem. Moonlight filters through it easily. The cloth is so thin it seems to glow, yet it is strong, carefully woven. You picture yourself slipping into such a tunic after a long, hot day, feeling it cling to your skin only lightly, letting every hint of breeze flow through. Egyptian nights might still simmer, but linen helps them feel gentler, washing you in a softness that feels almost luxurious. A small basket sits near the wooden frame. Inside are spindles, threads, and a half-finished piece of cloth. A young woman sits cross-legged beside it, twisting fibers with practiced fingers. She barely looks up as you approach, so absorbed is she in her work. Her hands move so steadily you feel drowsy just watching the motion. Twist, roll, pinch, draw. You kneel near her and notice the subtle rhythm in her breathing. Each exhale helps guide the tension in her thread. She glances at you and offers a faint smile before returning to her work. The fabric she creates will likely become clothing for the family or perhaps something destined for trade. You wonder how many hours of quiet nights like this one are woven into every tunic, every sheet, every scrap of cloth that touches a sleeping body. You continue forward and find another frame where garments hang in pairs. Tunics, kilts, shawls, and undergarments sway slowly in the breeze. You notice their colors. Most are pale, but some carry a faint tint of blue or faded yellow. A small, curious detail from old observations about Egyptian households surfaces in your mind. Some families like to soak linen in lightly scented water, using crushed lotus, mint, or desert herbs. Not enough to overwhelm the nose, just enough to make the fabric smell clean and soothing. You lift one shawl and press it lightly against your cheek. It carries a faint floral aroma. You can imagine someone laying this across their chest on a hot night, letting the scent lull them into sleep. Linen held not just coolness but comfort. You picture a child clinging to a cloth like this the way someone today might cling to a favorite blanket. As you wander between the hanging garments, you sense the quiet conversation between cloth and climate. Linen adapts. It releases heat, absorbs sweat, dries quickly, and refuses to weigh down the wearer. It makes you feel as if you are wearing almost nothing, yet offers modesty and protection. You glide your fingers along several garments, appreciating their airy lightness. From a nearby alcove you hear quiet discussion between two older women. Their voices drift into the open space, like wind brushing tall grass. They are mending garments, and they speak about which pieces will be worn at night. One woman holds up a tunic so thin it almost disappears in the lantern light. The other examines the stitching and clicks her tongue in approval. They talk about how certain weaves stay cooler, how some pieces become too coarse after many washings, how others soften beautifully over time. A small, lesser-known observation about ancient Egyptians floats into your mind. Some households believed that sleeping in freshly washed linen encouraged better dreams. You imagine someone laying out a recently dried tunic, inhaling the scent of sunlight and water, hoping the night would bring visions of peace or even divine favor. You step away and notice a set of wooden pegs beside a small doorway. Several garments hang at different heights. You realize they are intentionally placed like this to test airflow. The higher garments sway a little faster. The lower ones move more gently. Some families would hang clothing this way to check temperature shifts before deciding whether to sleep indoors or outdoors. A quiet but practical nighttime ritual. Nearby, a pot of warm water sits in a shallow pit. Not boiling, not steaming, just warm. A woman kneels beside it, soaking a strip of linen and wringing it out carefully. She spreads the damp cloth across a low bench. You watch the moisture evaporate slowly, carrying a bit of coolness into the air around her. She touches her face with the wet cloth, closes her eyes, and breathes in relief. You follow suit and touch the edge of the cloth. The sensation is refreshing, a hint of nighttime comfort in a world where heat lingers stubbornly until dawn. As you take in the scene, a discussion among textile researchers slips through your thoughts. Some specialists disagree about whether ancient Egyptian clothing was intentionally designed to cool the body, or whether linen simply happened to be the perfect material available. Both arguments feel plausible. But watching these families prepare their garments with such care, you sense that people understood the cooling benefits instinctively. They lived through long summers where every detail mattered. You walk toward a corner where a large linen sheet hangs from two poles. It stretches wide like a soft curtain. You pull it gently and feel its smooth sway. Sheets like this were often used on rooftops or courtyards to create private sleeping areas, but they also played a role in managing airflow. When the wind shifts direction, the sheet stiffens momentarily, then flutters in response, guiding cool currents toward those resting behind it. You slip behind the sheet and find the air noticeably gentler. The cloth filters harsh heat, giving you a small bubble of comfort. You lie back on a woven mat placed beneath it. The mat feels firm and supportive. The linen above you moves faintly with the wind, and the motion soothes your nerves. You close your eyes a moment, letting your body sink into the coolness. When you open them again, you spot a small bowl near your side. Inside is a mixture of crushed herbs and water. Immediately you understand its purpose. Families sometimes dabbed diluted herbal mixtures on linen to keep it smelling fresh, especially during intense summer nights when sweat would cling easily to fabric. You lift the bowl and swirl the contents gently before placing it back. A lantern flickers nearby, drawing your attention. Its flame dances softly, throwing warm shadows across the cloth. The contrasting light and cool night air reveal something deeply human about this culture. They knew how to adapt. They turned flax into comfort, and comfort into ritual. You rise and walk back into the main space, letting the hanging garments brush against your arms. The sensation feels like walking through a living forest of soft, whispering fabric. Linen sways, breathes, waits for the night to settle. You pause near the last frame and let your hands rest gently on a hanging tunic. You imagine slipping it over your shoulders, stepping into the Egyptian night, and feeling the weight of heat lighten just enough to let you sleep. The fabric promises softness, relief, and quiet. It promises survival through the fiercest summers. You breathe deeply, letting the scent of flax, water, and night air surround you. When you finally step away from the linen frames, you feel lighter, cooler, and closer to the ancient rhythm that guided people through countless hot evenings. You follow a path that winds between low walls and narrow alleys until you reach an open platform where several wooden bed frames rest in the dimness. At first glance, they look simple, almost plain. But as you approach, you notice the care in their construction, the smooth curves of the legs, the thoughtful way each slat is placed. You pause and let your hand settle on one frame. The wood feels warm from the day, yet faintly cooler on the underside, as if holding a secret within its grain. These beds are not tall like modern ones. They sit close to the ground, just high enough to allow airflow beneath them. When you crouch and run your fingers along the space beneath a frame, the air there feels significantly cooler. Warm air clings to ceilings and rises into upper spaces, but the cooler currents settle here, hugging the earth. Egyptians understood that long before thermometers existed. They built beds that kept sleepers lifted just enough to catch those gentler currents. You stand again and examine the design more closely. Each bed is made of sturdy local wood, often acacia or sycamore, carved and polished until smooth. The surface has a slightly glossy sheen from years of oiling. Some frames have elegantly curved legs that resemble the stance of an animal about to spring. Others are simpler, with straight legs and wide slats. But every frame has the same purposeful quality. It is built for ventilation. A detail frequently mentioned by archaeologists surfaces in your thoughts. Many Egyptian beds used woven support surfaces made of leather strips, plant fibers, or rope latticework. These suspended the sleeper slightly above the wooden frame, allowing air to move freely below. You run your hand across one of these woven areas and feel its flexibility. It yields gently under pressure, then returns to its shape. This makes the bed both supportive and breathable. You lie down carefully on one frame, testing its comfort. The woven surface molds beneath you with a pleasant firmness. The breeze from the open courtyard carries across your skin. You sigh softly at the coolness that passes beneath your back. Even the faintest airflow becomes a blessing in a world where summer nights glow with heat. Beside one bed sits a small footrest carved in the shape of a gentle curve. Many Egyptians slept with their heads elevated by wooden headrests rather than soft pillows. You lift one and examine it. The surface is smooth, shaped to cradle the head while keeping the neck supported. At first it seems strange to you, so different from modern softness. Yet when you gently lower your head onto it, you realize the benefit. Your neck aligns comfortably, and your head is lifted into a place where breezes touch the skin more easily. A small fragment of folklore related to sleeping arrangements drifts into your thoughts. Some families believe that sleeping elevated on a wooden frame kept wandering spirits from disturbing them during the hottest nights. Whether symbolic or practical, the idea adds a layer of tenderness to these beds. They are not only tools but guardians of rest. As you lie there, the wooden slats beneath the woven surface creak softly, but the sound is not unpleasant. It blends with the night. You close your eyes and listen carefully. A distant flute plays somewhere beyond the walls. A dog barks in the far reaches of the settlement. The whisper of the wind carries through the courtyard. The bed beneath you becomes part of the rhythm, holding your body in a place where sleep seems entirely possible. You rise after a while and wander toward a bed frame with intricate carvings along its sides. The carvings show lotus flowers, symbols of rebirth and beauty. The frame belonged to a wealthier household, perhaps someone who valued decorative meaning as much as comfort. The edges feel smooth beneath your fingers. A carefully tended piece, polished many times. You picture a family placing this bed in a shaded corner, waiting for the night breeze to touch the carved petals. Another bed nearby carries no decoration at all. It is sturdy and worn, with softened corners from years of use. You sense that this bed may have been passed down through generations. You place your hand on it and feel its quiet history, a piece of craftsmanship that has carried countless sleepers through unbearable heat and long nights. From the doorway of a nearby home, you hear gentle conversation. Two men discuss the practicalities of arranging beds according to wind direction. One suggests placing the frames near the open side of the courtyard. The other insists on moving them closer to the inner wall, where the breeze will be less direct but more steady. Their debate feels relaxed, shaped by long experience. A quiet observation from researchers comes to mind as you listen. Some believe that Egyptian households viewed bed placement as a nightly ritual rather than a fixed arrangement. People moved their frames where airflow felt best, reading the wind the way others might read a map. Watching the discussion unfold, you can imagine this happening every night during the hottest months. You walk toward the far corner, where a young girl smooths a linen sheet across her family's bed. She tugs each corner with practiced care, then tests the surface with the back of her hand. Satisfied, she sits beside it and hums quietly. The sheet ripples as a breeze brushes it, and she smiles as if greeting an old friend. You appreciate the simple wisdom in her actions. In another corner, a man adjusts the height of a small wooden block beneath one bed leg. Raising or lowering a single point of contact allows him to angle the bed slightly toward the wind. You marvel at how intuitive this feels. No complicated machinery, just a shift in angle that changes everything about airflow. A lantern flickers near the wall. Its glow illuminates a basin of water placed beneath one of the beds. The water will not stay cool for long, but its presence encourages evaporation that lifts a faint chill toward the sleeping area. You dip your fingers in the basin and feel the subtle temperature difference. You watch the way the lantern light reflects on the water and dances across the bed frame. The entire space feels like a quiet workshop of comfort, shaped by human hands and nightly patience. You wander to the most elevated bed in the space, placed near a low window. You stand next to it and feel the steady airflow slipping through the opening. You imagine lying there with your head on the wooden rest, eyes half closed, hearing the night hum through the window. Even without soft cushions, the experience feels serene. You place your palm on the bed frame one more time before stepping back. The wood holds a softness earned through long use. You understand now why these beds mattered so deeply. They were not luxury. They were survival shaped into comfort. They lifted bodies into cooler currents, allowed heat to escape, and created resting places strong enough to handle nights heavy with warmth. As you move away from the beds, you take one last slow breath of the cool air drifting beneath them. You carry that sensation with you, knowing these frames are more than furniture. They are quiet teachers guiding you deeper into the ancient night. You leave the wooden bed frames behind and walk toward a quieter corner of the settlement, guided by the soft creak of reeds shifting in the night breeze. The sound is light and rhythmic, almost like distant waves brushing ashore. As you step into a dimly lit courtyard, you notice a set of reed mats arranged neatly along the ground. Their woven surfaces catch the lantern glow, creating patterns that look like tiny ripples on water. You crouch beside one, resting your palm lightly on its surface. The mat feels surprisingly cool, far cooler than the packed earth beneath it, and you lift your hand in curiosity, wondering how such a simple material could hold onto the night's gentlest breeze so well. The scent surrounding the mats carries the earthy sweetness of Nile reeds. You inhale and feel something loosen in your chest. These mats are not just bedding. They are carefully crafted tools for coping with summer nights that press down like heavy blankets. Each reed is chosen for its thickness, dried under the sun, then split and smoothed before being woven into the firm lattice beneath your hand. You run your fingers along the weave, noticing how the surface breathes. Tiny gaps between reeds allow heat to fall away from your skin, letting cool air rise to replace it. A well-known observation about Egyptian daily life slips into your thoughts. Reeds from marshy areas near the Nile were abundant and durable, making them one of the most essential materials for domestic use. People used them for baskets, furniture, sandals, and even small boats. Yet their role in sleeping comfort often goes unnoticed, despite being quietly vital during the hottest months. You lower yourself onto one of the mats, stretching out carefully. The woven surface rustles beneath your weight, creating a whispering sound that soothes your ears almost instantly. The mat flexes slightly, supporting you without sinking. Warm air moves past the upper surface, but cooler currents slip underneath. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the contrast wash over you. Your back feels supported, your skin breathes freely, and the night becomes gentler in a way you did not expect. Beside you, a family prepares their own mats. A father dusts his mat with gentle flicks of his hand. A mother shakes out a linen cloth before laying it across the weave. Their teenage son smooths the edges, checking for any loose reeds. The family works quietly, speaking only occasionally in soft tones. The calmness of their routine feels infectious. You watch as their youngest child curls up on her mat, hugging a small woven doll shaped from leftover reed strips. Her laughter from earlier has faded into a sleepy hum. You rise and walk to a nearby storage shed where bundles of reeds lean against the wall. A man inside kneels on the ground, weaving a new mat. His fingers move with impressive speed, guiding each reed into place with confident precision. The pattern grows row by row, tight enough to stay strong but loose enough to breathe. You crouch beside him and study the rhythm in his hands. He ties off each row with twisted fiber cord, pulls the weave tight, then begins again. His motions feel almost hypnotic. He gestures for you to feel the newest section. You press your fingertips against it. The reeds are smooth and slightly cool. The man explains that the mat will feel even cooler once it has been used for several nights, as the reed fibers gradually adapt to the sleeper's body and the local airflow. The idea fascinates you. These mats are not static objects. They learn. They adjust. A small story preserved in village memory enters your mind. Some people believed that certain reed bundles produced especially cool mats if harvested at specific times of the moon. Whether superstition or simple pattern recognition passed down through generations, the notion adds a playful charm to this humble craft. You stand and stroll deeper into the courtyard. Several mats are arranged side by side, each slightly different in pattern. Some have diagonal weaves for extra flexibility. Others feature a tighter horizontal design, meant for heavier sleepers. You kneel again and trace the differences with your fingertips. Each mat tells its own story. Each reflects the hands that shaped it. In a corner illuminated by a small clay lantern, two sisters repair an older mat. They trim frayed reeds and replace worn sections with new pieces. The lantern light flickers across their faces as they work. Their expressions are calm, focused. One sister uses a small knife to shave down a reed, ensuring the replacement blends with the original. You marvel at the patience required. A mat might last several years, but it demands gentle care. Nearby, a mother sprinkles a tiny amount of scented water onto her mat. The droplets darken the reeds for a moment before vanishing into the warm air. A soft aroma of mint and lotus fills the space. She spreads her hands over the mat, encouraging the scent to settle. You imagine stretching out on that mat, inhaling the faint perfume as the night breeze carries it upward. A simple sensory gesture transforms the sleeping space into something tender and peaceful. A quiet disagreement drifts from another group in the courtyard. Two elders discuss the origins of reed mat weaving. One insists the technique came from early marsh communities many generations earlier. The other claims the method began as a byproduct of basket making. Their conversation is thoughtful and measured, and you realize it echoes a larger debate among modern researchers who still puzzle over the earliest development of textile-like reed structures. Listening to the elders, you sense how tradition blends with guesswork, shaping a history that may never be fully pinned down. You wander back to your own mat and lie down again, letting the cool texture embrace your back. You feel a reed shift beneath your shoulder blade and hear a soft rustle. The sound repeats each time you breathe deeply. It is a gentle reminder that the mat is alive in its own way, responding to movement, shaping itself around you. You turn your head to watch the lantern glow ripple across other mats. Families settle into their places. A few whisper quietly, sharing thoughts before sleep. A dog curls beside a mat and settles with a soft grunt. A breeze whispers across the courtyard, making the reeds hum softly. You feel as though you are floating on a shallow river of sound and texture. You sit up and gently lift the corner of your mat, letting your hand slip underneath. The air there is notably cooler. You imagine yourself returning night after night, easing onto this woven surface until the mat softens into the perfect companion for sleep. You understand why Egyptians favored reeds. They create comfort without trapping heat, offering a quiet invitation to rest. You rise slowly and take a few steps around the courtyard. You admire how each mat becomes part of the family's nightly rhythm. They roll them, dust them, repair them, scent them, and depend on them. They trust their mats the same way people today trust soft mattresses or electric fans. But these mats do something special. They allow the night air to interact with your body without resistance. You breathe deeply, feeling the cool trace of that breath settle along your skin. When you return to stand over your mat, you gently run your palms along its surface once more. The reeds whisper beneath your touch. You close your eyes and imagine the night drawing even closer, shaping itself to help every sleeper find relief. You step back from the courtyard carrying the soft rustle of reeds with you. The mats fade into the darkness behind you, but their coolness continues to linger along your spine, guiding you deeper into the Egyptian night. You weave your way out of the courtyard of reed mats and find yourself walking along a quiet passage that opens onto a broader street, lined with modest homes whose windows face the night, as if waiting for a breeze to arrive. You feel the air shifting faintly against your cheek, not strong but present, like a soft hand guiding you forward. You follow that subtle movement until you reach a narrow gap between two houses. When you step inside the passage, the temperature drops with surprising speed. A light current brushes through the space, slipping past your shoulders and curling around your neck. You pause, astonished at how suddenly the air has changed. The gap is not accidental. Many homes were built with small channels like this between them, creating natural wind tunnels. You stand there a moment, letting the breeze wash over your arms. The sensation feels almost engineered. You realize that ancient Egyptians knew far more about airflow than their simple architecture suggests. These small alleys and windows were placed strategically to catch whatever wind the night provided. You take another step and notice how the air behaves. It moves in a steady line, flowing from one direction with gentle pressure, picking up speed as it funnels between the walls. You tilt your head and feel the difference when you lean slightly to one side. You imagine families learning these wind patterns instinctively, adjusting their homes and sleeping spaces to match the nightly rhythms of the air. A widely accepted insight among archaeologists comes to your mind as you explore the narrow passage. Many Egyptian houses were arranged in compact clusters, not only for shade but also to guide breezes through living spaces. These tight arrangements allowed airflow to be concentrated and directed in predictable ways. You smile at the cleverness of it. Instead of fighting the climate, they shaped their world to work in partnership with it. You continue down the passage and see a small window near the top of a wall. The opening is angled downward, as though shaped to catch wind from above and channel it into the home. You stand below it and feel the faint draft coming through. A linen curtain flutters gently with each breath of air. The curtain moves softly, like the wing of a quiet bird. You step closer and touch the wall. The stone around the window feels cooler than the bricks below it. Air slips out in a thin, steady flow. You imagine someone inside, sleeping directly beneath that window, letting the air wash across their face through the darkest hours of the night. The thought comforts you. You move farther into the street and notice more windows placed in similar ways. Some are high, some are wider, some tilt at angles that seem almost artistic. But each has a purpose: to channel moving air into a home that would otherwise trap heat long after sunset. You follow the pattern until the road bends slightly, leading you toward a larger communal space. At the entrance to this open area stands a woman carrying a woven fan. She lifts it with a graceful motion and directs a wave of air toward her child, who sits on a low stool near a doorway. The child laughs as the breeze ruffles his hair. The woman smiles, repeating the motion with practiced ease. You watch her and understand that mixing natural airflow with hand-directed breezes created a cooling method that was simple, elegant, and surprisingly effective. A memory from historical descriptions of Egyptian life surfaces while you watch her fan the air. Manual fanning was often used at night, not just for cooling but for encouraging air movement inside spaces with limited cross breezes. Servants in wealthier households even stood near beds with large fans, moving air steadily until their masters fell asleep. You picture the rhythmic sweep of such fans creating gentle soundscapes, pulling warm air upward and pushing cooler air downward. The woman notices your interest and steps aside to show you a narrow doorway. You crouch slightly and enter a small room where two windows face each other. You instantly notice the strong airflow. The wind does not blast through, but it moves with clear direction, flowing from one window to the other like a river of air. You stand between them and feel the breeze tug at your clothing. The sensation refreshes you, even though the temperature outside remains high. Two elderly men sit near the center of the room on woven stools, enjoying the steady breeze. They speak in measured tones, discussing how the wind will behave tomorrow night. Their conversation carries the weight of experience. One predicts a slight southern breeze after midnight. The other expects it to shift eastward. Their disagreement echoes a similar uncertainty among modern researchers who continue to study Egyptian architecture. Specialists still debate whether such ventilation patterns were intentionally engineered or simply learned through trial and error over generations. Watching these men, you sense that practical observation mattered far more than theory. You walk around the room, touching the smooth plaster near the windows. The openings are narrow on the outside but widen toward the inside. This shape encourages air to accelerate as it enters, then settle into a softer flow once inside the room. You admire the subtle genius behind such a design. It requires no moving parts, no tools, just an understanding of air and space. As you leave the room, you notice another airflow feature that seems almost hidden. A small vent near ground-level channels air from a shaded courtyard into the home. You kneel near it and place your face close to the opening. The air that spills from it is significantly cooler. You close your eyes for a moment, enjoying the sensation. Someone probably placed their sleeping mat right beside this vent during the hottest nights. You rise and step outside again. The night air shifts gently, guiding your next steps toward a cluster of rooftops visible in the distance. The wind shapes its path through the streets, swirling around corners and slipping into open spaces. You follow it until you reach a long corridor created by two parallel walls. When you step inside, the breeze intensifies once again. You walk slowly down the corridor, marveling at how different the airflow feels from one end to the other. At the entrance, the breeze is light. Midway through, it strengthens to a steady current. Near the far exit, it grows faint again. You pause in the middle, letting the air cool your face. The steady movement wraps around you like a gentle ribbon. A small group of children runs past you, laughing as they race the length of the corridor. They squeal when the wind flutters their clothes. One child stops and presses her hands against the wall to feel the coolness that lingers there. You watch her and smile. Even the youngest among them understands where comfort can be found. You turn toward a nearby house, intrigued by the shape of the roofline. Its edge curves slightly upward, directing wind toward the interior. You climb the outer steps and stand near the roof's edge. A steady breeze hits your face immediately. Below you, a courtyard lies open, catching the directed airflow. A family rests on mats, enjoying the cool that flows down from the rooftop. You step into the courtyard and feel the temperature drop again. Air moves through this space like a quiet visitor, touching every sleeper before slipping out through an opening on the far wall. You walk slowly through the area, noting how each sleeping position aligns with the airflow. No spot is random. Every corner speaks of careful arrangement. You kneel beside a sleeping spot and place your hand on the mat. The breeze flows directly across it. You imagine lying here at the height of summer, feeling the wind brush your skin, letting it carry away the day's heat until your body relaxes fully. You stay there a moment longer, feeling the air across your face and imagining the endless nights shaped by these gentle drafts. Then you rise, ready to follow the wind toward whatever secret lies deeper in the Egyptian night. You slip quietly out of the breezy courtyard and follow a narrow footpath leading toward a cluster of large clay basins arranged beneath a canopy of wooden beams. The air here feels thick again, heavy with heat that the night has not yet managed to steal away. You breathe in and catch a hint of fresh water mixed with the earthy scent of clay. As you step closer, you hear the quiet patter of droplets falling into shallow pools. It is a soothing sound, soft enough to make your shoulders relax. You move toward a wide ceramic tub at the center of the area. Its rim rises to your waist, and inside it holds several inches of water that glows silver under the moonlight. Someone has stirred it recently, leaving faint ripples drifting outward in slow, widening circles. You dip your fingers into the water and feel a coolness that surprises you. The temperature is not icy, but it carries enough relief to make your breath deepen. In this heat, even modest coolness feels like a small miracle. A familiar detail from Egyptian household habits comes to mind as you let the water slip between your fingers. Many families practice nighttime washing not as a luxury but as an essential routine, especially during the hottest months. A quick rinse before sleep helped lower body temperature and wash away sweat, dust, and tension from the day. You imagine people stepping quietly to these basins after dinner, cupping their hands and pouring cool water over their arms, faces, and necks. You scoop a handful and splash it lightly along your forearm. The sensation wakes your skin. The water leaves a fine sheen that evaporates quickly, taking heat with it. You drag your damp hand over your face and close your eyes for a moment, savoring the relief. A slight breeze passes through, brushing against the fresh moisture. You inhale slowly as the cooling deepens. Next to the tub sits a small wooden bench where a set of clay cups rests upside down. They are used for methodical washing, letting people pour water gently instead of plunging their hands into the basin. You lift one cup and feel how light it is. The rim is smooth. The shape fits perfectly in your palm. You turn it over and dip it halfway into the water before lifting it out again. A soft stream trickles from the cup, splashing against your knee. An older woman approaches the basin carrying a jar of water drawn earlier from a nearby well. She greets you with a quiet nod, then pours the contents into the tub. The water mixes slowly, sending a new set of ripples outward. She begins to wash her arms with unhurried motions. Her movements have a calm, ritualistic grace. You watch her and sense that this routine has been practiced nightly for as long as she can remember. A gentle piece of traditional knowledge comes to mind as you observe her. Some Egyptians added a pinch of natron or fragrant herbs into their nighttime wash water. Natron softened the water and gave the skin a clean, powdery finish. Herbs added refreshing scents that made hot nights seem a little easier to bear. As you sniff the water in the basin, you detect a faint aroma of mint. The scent rises gently, weaving into the air like a soft ribbon. You step aside to give the woman space and approach a smaller basin where two young boys are splashing themselves quietly. One scoops water over his shoulders while the other dips his feet, kicking gently under the surface. Their laughter echoes softly in the open air. Their mother watches from nearby, making sure they do not spill too much water. Even in a land shaped by a river as mighty as the Nile, water is precious. Every drop matters. You walk toward a long stone trough located near the corner of the washing area. Its narrow interior holds a trickle of running water guided from a small canal nearby. You kneel beside it and run your fingers along the stream. It feels cooler than the water in the basins. You cup your hands and bring the water to your lips. The taste is fresh and mild, carrying a hint of minerals. Someone built this stone channel with care, smoothing the edges to prevent injury and shaping the incline to maintain a gentle flow. Beside the trough lies a wooden ladle carved from a single piece of acacia. You lift it and admire the craftsmanship. Its surface is worn from frequent use. You fill the ladle and let the water pour slowly over your head. The sensation sends a small shiver down your spine. For a few heartbeats, you feel almost weightless. A pair of young women approach the trough with clay jugs. They fill them patiently, chatting softly about the day's work. One mentions how much she looks forward to this nightly cooling. The other agrees, saying she cannot fall asleep without washing first. Their voices blend with the gentle trickling of the water. You stand and step aside as they finish, respecting the simple importance of their ritual. Across the courtyard, a man tends to a small fire beneath a metal bowl. You walk over and watch as he warms a small portion of water. You wonder why he heats it at all on such a hot night, until you see him pour it into a basin containing cool water. He stirs it gently to create a lukewarm mixture, a more soothing temperature for washing infants or elders. The idea feels thoughtful and tender. As you wander through the area, you notice that each basin, jug, and trough holds its own place in the nightly cooling process. Some cool the skin, some refresh the senses, some simply provide comfort through the ritual itself. You take a moment to sit on a stone bench near the largest basin. You watch the moon reflect in the water. Its surface looks like a piece of liquid silver. A quiet disagreement from two men nearby catches your ear. They discuss whether rinsing with cold water before sleep truly cools the body long term, or whether it offers only temporary relief. One insists it lowers the core temperature enough to improve sleep. The other believes the cooling effect fades too quickly without a breeze to support it. Their conversation mirrors questions that modern researchers also explore regarding evaporative cooling and body regulation. You listen, appreciating the timelessness of their discussion. You lift your hand again and drag your fingertips along the basin's surface. The water feels slightly cooler now. Breezes from earlier must have passed over it, assisting evaporation. You imagine these basins quietly working through the night, cooling small patches of air around them, offering comfort to anyone who steps close. You watch as a mother guides her daughter toward the water. The child hesitates for a moment, then giggles when her mother scoops water onto her neck. The droplets glisten briefly under the moon before they vanish. The child shivers with delight, then leans in for another splash. You feel warmth in your chest as you watch the tender moment. Nearby, someone places a shallow bowl of water in a shaded corner. You follow their movement and realize the bowl will provide evaporative cooling to anyone sleeping near it. The idea seems simple but clever. You rest your palm above the bowl and feel the cool air drifting upward. You take one last wash from the basin, letting the water run down your arms in thin, cool streams. The sensation centers you, grounding you in the quiet rhythm of these Egyptian nights. You stand there, letting the last droplets fall, letting the breeze dry them gently from your skin. When you finally step away, the area behind you fills with soft splashes, low voices, and the mingled scents of water and herbs. You walk slowly into the warm night, carrying with you the feeling of fresh, cool water clinging to your skin like a quiet blessing. You follow the soft echo of dripping water until it fades behind you, and soon the warm quiet of the night settles around your shoulders again. The path ahead leads you past several small storage buildings whose walls smell faintly of grain and dried herbs. You keep walking until you reach an entrance framed by two large jars. A man carrying a woven basket steps out of the doorway, and a puff of cool air follows him, brushing against your skin like a secret waiting to be discovered. You pause, intrigued, then slip inside. The room is dim, lit only by a single oil lamp placed on a low stool. The flame casts long shadows across shelves, lined with jars, baskets, and shallow bowls. The air feels significantly cooler than the world outside, though still warm by your modern standards. You take a deeper breath and notice a mild scent of earth, straw, and cool clay. It is the smell of preserved chill, the closest thing ancient Egyptians had to nighttime refrigeration. Families relied heavily on small storage rooms like this to protect food, oils, and drink from the relentless heat. You run your hand along a wide clay pot sitting on the floor. Its surface feels slightly cooler than the air around it. The jar's thick walls protect its contents by slowing the rise of heat, similar to how mud brick houses work but on a smaller scale. You lean closer and tap the side of the jar. The sound is soft and hollow, like a heart beating far beneath the surface. A well-accepted detail from archaeological studies comes to mind while you examine the vessel. Many storage jars were partially buried in the ground or kept in shaded corners, so the earth could help maintain lower temperatures. You crouch and touch the floor. It feels cooler than the surrounding surfaces. You imagine families storing water, beer, butter, figs, and milk here, not because they expected them to stay cold, but because they hoped to keep them from becoming too warm to tolerate. You turn and notice a small pit near the back of the storage room. The pit is lined with smooth stones, arranged in a circle, and filled with sand that feels surprisingly cool beneath your fingertips. A faint trickle of water flows in a channel beside it. The mixture of damp sand and slow evaporation works together to lower the temperature inside the pit. People stored perishable items like cheese or delicate herbs in such spaces during the hottest seasons. Beside the pit lies a set of shallow clay lids. You lift one and examine the design. It fits perfectly over the stone circle, creating a simple cooling chamber that protects food from pests and heat. You lower the lid again and feel the subtle drop in temperature near your feet. You understand now why people placed these small cooling zones throughout their homes and courtyards. They offered pockets of relief that worked quietly through the night. You rise and walk back toward the shelves. A basket filled with dried barley sits at eye level. Nearby rests a jar filled with date paste, sealed with pressed clay. You pick up the jar and feel its weight. The clay seal feels smooth and dry. The jar's surface carries faint condensation that tells you its contents remain slightly cool inside. You imagine someone breaking this seal at dawn to prepare a morning meal, thankful that the paste has not turned unpleasant overnight. From the corner of the room, you hear soft footsteps. An older man enters carrying a bundle of reeds. He nods politely before moving toward a jar half buried in the floor. He lifts the lid, checks the contents, and replaces it carefully. As he works, he hums quietly to himself. His motions reflect long familiarity, the kind built over years of tending small, cool spaces that protect precious food through unbearable heat. A bit of folklore from local communities slips into your memory. It is said that some households once placed small tokens or carved wooden figures in these cooling rooms to encourage the spirits of the earth to keep the space chill. Whether rooted in belief or playful imagination, the idea adds a gentle charm to the dim room. You search the shadows and find a tiny clay figurine perched on a shelf. It resembles a small animal curled in sleep. You smile as you imagine someone placing it there with hope. You approach a large jar near the doorway. The neck is wide, and the lid is heavy. You lift it slowly. Inside rests water that looks still and dark. You dip a cupped hand into it. The water feels cooler than the air by several degrees. You bring your hand to your lips. The taste is mild and refreshing. You imagine this water being used not just for drinking but also to dampen cloth for evaporative cooling. A quiet conversation drifts in from outside. Two women stand near the doorway, discussing how long certain foods can survive in this nightly coolness. One believes figs last longer when kept in woven baskets. The other claims shallow pots preserve them better. Their gentle disagreement reminds you of the many discussions among modern historians who still puzzle over which cooling methods Egyptians relied on most. Without written instructions, small details remain open to interpretation. And yet, standing here, the system feels instinctively clear. You walk toward the far wall and touch the plaster. It feels cool to your palm. The room's thick construction blocks daytime heat and holds the night's cooler air like a protective shell. You can almost see the temperature gradient within the shadows. Upper shelves hold items that can endure slight warmth. Lower spaces, especially near buried jars, cradle more delicate foods. Everything has a place. You kneel beside a small wicker basket containing a handful of leafy herbs. Their scent fills the space with a fresh greenness that contrasts wonderfully with the earthy cool. You brush a leaf between your fingers and lift it to your nose. The aroma lingers in the air. The basket rests near a jar partially filled with damp sand. The setup acts like a natural cooling tray. You marvel at the gentle ingenuity behind it. In the corner you notice a stack of small clay bowls turned upside down on a stand. You flip one over and feel the inside. It is slightly cool, likely from its proximity to the buried jars. You imagine someone pouring water or beer into it during the night, enjoying a drink that retains a hint of freshness in the hot air. Near the door, a family places a tray of soaked fava beans inside the room. They leave them in the cool air for the night so they soften without fermenting. You watch as the mother wipes sweat from her forehead, relieved by the drop in temperature as she steps inside. She lingers for a moment before returning to the hotter world outside. It is clear why these storage rooms counted as some of the most precious spaces in a household. You take one last walk around the room, dragging your fingers along jars, baskets, and clay floors. The coolness wraps around your skin like a soft blanket. You know that outside, the heat still lingers. But in here, the night breathes differently. It tucks coolness into corners, hides it beneath clay lids, and saves it for those who need it most. When you finally step outside, the warm air meets you again with open arms. It feels heavier now. After experiencing the cool sanctuary within, you look back at the entrance, grateful for the small oasis of relief it offered. You continue deeper into the night, carrying the memory of that quiet, gentle chill with you. You walk away from the cool storage room and drift toward the edge of the settlement where the homes thin out and the ground slopes gently downward. The air feels heavier here, but it carries a hint of movement that draws you forward. You hear the soft chorus of frogs before you see the water. Their rhythmic croaking rises and falls like a lullaby guiding you through the darkness. You emerge from behind a cluster of palm trees, and there it is, the Nile. A shimmering ribbon of moonlit silver stretching into the horizon. You step onto the damp soil near the riverbank and immediately the temperature shifts. Cool air rises from the water and wraps itself around your ankles. You pause to savor the sensation. After hours in the restless heat of inland courtyards, this cool breath feels like a gift pressed gently into your hands. You crouch and let your fingers brush the moist earth. It clings to your skin, cool and pliant, releasing a faint scent of river life. A detail often mentioned by students of ancient Egypt surfaces in your thoughts. Many families spent the hottest summer nights sleeping close to the river or within reach of its breezes. The Nile was not only the lifeline of their crops and daily water supply, it was also a source of comfort that calmed the worst of the heat. As you inhale the river air, you finally understand why people gravitated toward it once the sun sank. You walk closer, stepping lightly through reeds that whisper as you pass. The river hums with gentle currents. You kneel at the water's edge and dip your hand in. The temperature surprises you. It is cooler than the air by a few degrees, enough to make your skin tighten slightly. You hold your hand there and watch moonlit ripples distort your reflection. A soft splash draws your attention to a small wooden raft tied to a stake. A fisherman sits upon it, mending a net under the dim glow of a clay lamp. He pauses to greet you with a brief smile before returning to his work. His hands move with a relaxed grace, weaving fibers as though the night belongs entirely to him. You watch him for a moment. The calmness of the scene feels like a secret you have been allowed to glimpse. A curious note from community traditions comes to mind. Some villagers believed that sleeping near the Nile invited dreams filled with messages from river spirits. Whether rooted in imagination or the calming effect of cooling breezes, the idea lingers as you scan the shimmering surface. You feel the river's quiet presence soothing your thoughts, encouraging you to unwind. You rise and walk along the bank, noticing several families settling on woven mats laid carefully on the river's edge. Some have placed clay jars nearby, allowing the water to cool the vessels more effectively through the night. A few adults dip cloths into the river to refresh their skin. The children laugh softly as the cold water surprises them. You watch as one girl presses a damp cloth against her neck and sighs with delight. You find a spot slightly elevated from the water and sit down. You tilt your head back and let the breeze brush across your face. The night sky reflects in the river, doubling the stars and making the world feel larger. Crickets hum in the reeds. A distant splash suggests a fish leaping briefly into the air. Every sound feels gentle, layered, and welcoming. You stretch your legs out and lean back on your palms. The air flowing across your skin feels different here. It carries the moisture of the river, which cools your body more effectively than the dry breeze inland. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the mixture of scents and sounds meld into one soothing rhythm. From nearby, you hear soft conversation. Two elders sit on a flat rock discussing how often people should sleep by the river during the worst summer nights. One argues that the cool breezes prevent heat exhaustion. The other worries about insects and humidity making sleep more restless. Their discussion mirrors the uncertainty among modern scholars who still debate how regularly families chose riverside sleeping compared to rooftop or courtyard arrangements. Listening to their voices drift across the water, you sense both points hold truth. You stand and wander toward a narrow inlet where lotus flowers float calmly on the surface. Their petals reflect pale moonlight, creating little pools of glowing white. You bend to smell one. The scent is faint but sweet, carrying a freshness that reminds you of early mornings. Some families believed lotus blossoms encouraged peaceful rest when placed near sleeping mats. You imagine the petals swaying on the water while someone nearby drifts into slumber. A woman sits by the inlet washing a basket. She looks up, smiles, and dips her hands again into the shimmering water. The ripples glide outward, like rings of light. She finishes rinsing the basket, sets it aside, and then scoops water onto her arms and neck. Her eyes close briefly as she enjoys the chill. You watch quietly, not wanting to disturb her moment. You walk farther along the bank until you reach a place where several mats are arranged side by side. A group of men sits together, watching the river's movements. One of them lifts a jar and pours a trickle of water onto the packed soil beside his mat. The small splash darkens the earth and releases a cool, earthy smell. He lies down near it, letting the evaporating moisture add a gentle chill to the air around him. Another man dips a small clay bowl into the river and sets it near his resting spot. The bowl will cool the surrounding air through evaporation. You kneel beside it and feel the faint draft rising from its surface. It amazes you how deceptively simple materials can create comfort in such intense heat. Your gaze drifts to a group of children sitting ankle-deep in the shallows, letting the river wash against their legs. Their laughter mingles with the croaking frogs. One child scoops up water with both hands and pours it over his head. Another kicks a small splash upward, catching the light. You watch them with quiet admiration. They are mastering the art of cooling off in a world without modern conveniences. You move toward a large palm tree leaning over the river. Its branches cast shifting shadows on the sand. Beneath the tree, a family prepares for rest. The mother spreads out a linen sheet while the father arranges small stones to secure its edges. Their son sets a jar close to the tree trunk. The daughter fans herself with a woven leaf. You step aside so they can finish their gentle ritual. You sit beneath the same palm tree, feeling its rough trunk press coolness against your back. The breeze gathers strength here. It blows across the water, slips through the reeds, and brings a cooling breath to everyone nearby. You close your eyes again. The scent of the river fills your lungs. A faint sound of oars draws your attention. A small boat glides slowly by. Two men aboard speak softly. Their voices ripple across the water with the same smoothness as their paddles. You watch the boat drift away, shrinking into the distance until it becomes a silhouette against the moon. You lie back on the sand and let your arms fall loosely to your sides. The cooling effect of the Nile seeps into your skin. You understand now why people came here night after night during the worst summer heat. The river is more than water. It is relief, breath, rhythm, and refuge. You rise slowly, brushing sand from your hands. You take one last look at the shimmering surface before stepping away from the bank. The river stays behind you, murmuring its eternal song as you move deeper into the warm Egyptian night. You leave the riverbank behind, carrying its cool breath on your skin as you return toward the darker paths that wind between palm groves and quiet homes. The night remains warm, but you can feel the temperature easing with every step away from the water. Soon another sensation reaches you, faint at first but unmistakable. A thin curl of smoke drifts through the air, carrying the scent of herbs, pungent and slightly sweet. You follow it instinctively, knowing what it means in a world where people sleep exposed to the open night. You pass beneath an arch of woven branches and step into a small courtyard where a clay bowl sits glowing faintly with embers. Someone has sprinkled crushed herbs and resin onto it. Thin streams of fragrant smoke rise in slow, swirling motions. A group of children sits nearby, watching the shapes in the smoke twist like quiet ghosts. Their mother uses a palm leaf to waft the smoke gently toward the sleeping mats arranged along the ground. When she notices you, she nods politely before returning to her work. This is the nightly ritual that kept families safe from the irritation of insects. Mosquitoes, beetles, midges, and other small creatures thrived in the warm darkness. To keep them away, Egyptians crafted simple but clever methods that relied on smoke, scent, and subtle design. You breathe in the herbal haze and feel its warmth settle on your skin. The mixture includes dried mint, juniper, and perhaps small shards of resin scraped from desert shrubs. The scent is strong but calming. A familiar insight from ancient household practices rises in your thoughts. People often burned pungent herbs or aromatic wood each evening not only to reduce insects, but also to mask unpleasant smells that clung to hot nights. Smoke became a form of cleansing, a subtle purifier that helped make sleeping spaces more comfortable. You watch the woman as she lifts another small scoop of herbs and scatters them across the glowing embers. The smoke thickens briefly, and the air grows richer. You walk toward the edge of the courtyard where several woven nets hang from a wooden frame. They sway gently in the night breeze. You run your hand along one and notice the texture. The fibers feel stiff but flexible, woven in a tight pattern that keeps small insects out while still allowing air to flow. The lower fringe has small weights tied to it so the net stays still during mild wind. You imagine someone lowering one of these nets over their sleeping mat, letting it rest like a breathable cocoon. A few steps away, a young man repairs another net. He threads a new piece of fiber through a gap, pulling it tight before knotting it firmly. His hands move quickly, accustomed to this nighttime maintenance. As he works, he hums softly, a song with a rising and falling melody that blends with the night. You kneel beside him and watch the weave grow row by row. The net expands like a living pattern under his fingers. A small but memorable fragment from community tradition comes to your mind. Some households believed that if you hung a tiny bundle of papyrus fiber dipped in fragrant oil near the entrance of a room, insects would avoid it completely. Whether this belief came from careful observation or hopeful imagination, the idea still carries charm. You glance around and spot such a bundle hanging near a doorway. Its faint aroma mixes with the herbal smoke. You walk toward the corner where a young girl sits holding a handful of dried flowers. She rubs them between her palms, then sprinkles the petals across her family's sleeping area. The crushed flowers release a mild scent, almost fruity. Her mother thanks her and spreads the petals more evenly across the mat. You watch them with a smile. Their small ritual turns the space into something gentle and fragrant. In another corner of the courtyard, an elder sits with a small clay cup filled with oil. He dips a reed into it and traces a line around the edge of his sleeping mat. The oil glimmers in the lantern light. The fragrance carries notes of cedar and perhaps myrrh. He whispers something under his breath, perhaps a personal prayer or simply a habitual rhyme. This method leaves a scent barrier that helps discourage crawling insects from entering. Nearby, two men talk quietly while examining a set of small clay containers. Their conversation drifts toward a lingering question. One argues that burning herbs works best for wide-open courtyards. The other insists that nets alone provide better protection indoors where smoke collects too easily. Their discussion mirrors the uncertainty modern researchers still hold about which methods ancient Egyptians relied on most consistently. Their tones remain friendly, though, reflecting the relaxed familiarity of nightly ritual. You stand again and wander toward a small doorway that leads into a dim sleeping room. The air inside feels warmer but noticeably free of pests. You look upward and see a narrow gap in the ceiling where a woven screen filters the breeze. Near the wall sits a pot of smouldering herbs placed carefully so the smoke drifts upward instead of toward the bed. Someone has arranged the sleeping space meticulously, ensuring both airflow and protection. You notice a woven basket hanging near the ceiling. Inside it rests a collection of pungent herbs and dried citrus peels. The scent diffuses slowly through the room. You reach up and touch the basket lightly. The herbs rustle quietly inside, releasing another hint of aroma. Stepping back outside, you return to the courtyard where a group of women sits preparing fresh bundles of herbs. They chatter softly as they crush leaves, tie stalks with fibers, and sort pieces according to fragrance. One woman lifts a bundle to her nose and breathes deeply before passing it to her neighbor. Another shakes a handful of leaves into a clay bowl. The rhythm of their work creates a soothing tapestry of sound. You sit beside them and watch as they create mixtures for different purposes. One mixture is meant to burn, another is meant to hang, a third is meant to be rubbed directly onto the wooden frames of beds. The combinations shift depending on the season, the insect population, and personal preference. The women laugh when one suggests that mosquitoes seem to prefer biting her more than anyone else. They tease her gently and offer to prepare an extra strong blend for her mat. A young boy runs into the courtyard carrying a small pot filled with glowing coals. He drops a pinch of crushed leaves into it, then waves his hand to stir the smoke. The aroma climbs upward and expands through the space. He moves the pot from one corner to another, creating a moving ring of protection. You watch the smoke trail behind him, drifting into dark corners where insects might hide. His task is simple but important, one performed by children for generations. You walk toward a low wall and lean against it, letting the smoke and scented air wrap around you. You feel protected in a way that goes beyond physical comfort. The night no longer feels threatening. It feels tended, cared for, shaped by rituals that transform a harsh environment into a place where rest is possible. A dog lies curled near the smoke bowl, its ears twitching occasionally at distant sounds. Even animals seem to enjoy the insect-free aura the herbs create. You scratch behind the dog's ear, and it sighs contentedly, shifting closer to the warmth. A faint breeze slips through the courtyard, carrying the scent of cooling herbs across your face. You close your eyes and breathe deeply. The aroma makes you drowsy. The smoke seems to soften the edges of the night. The nets sway gently. Voices lower to murmurs. The world grows calmer. You watch the last embers glow softly inside the clay bowl before stepping away from the courtyard. The air behind you remains fragrant and protective. As you continue your journey through the Egyptian night, you carry that gentle shield with you, knowing how thoughtfully people shaped their sleep despite the challenges around them. You move away from the courtyard where fragrant smoke drifts lazily into the dark, and soon another scent begins to thread its way into your senses. It is softer, smoother, and warmer than the herbal smoke you left behind. The aroma floats gently through the air like a thin veil. You follow it instinctively, letting it lead you across a quiet stretch of open ground. The night feels still here, as though waiting for you to discover something important. Ahead, a cluster of small clay lamps flickers near a row of low benches. A few people sit there, their silhouettes outlined by amber light. As you approach, the air fills with notes of cooling oils and faint sweetness. Someone is preparing nighttime fragrance, a practice woven deeply into Egyptian life. This is not perfume for luxury. This is a tool of comfort, a way to soothe the mind and ease the body into rest during oppressive heat. You take a slow breath, letting the mixture of lotus oil, palm resin, and crushed herbs drift into your lungs. The effect is subtle but immediate. Your shoulders drop, your jaw loosens. The scent seems to cool you from the inside out. A common observation found in depictions of Egyptian daily routines comes to mind. Fragrant oils were not only used for ceremonies or adornment, they also played a major role in managing heat. Many oils helped the skin retain moisture, while giving a pleasant cooling sensation that lasted through the night. You step closer to a small table, where several clay jars sit open, their jeweled contents shimmering in the lamplight. An elderly woman sits beside the jars, stirring one of them with a thin wooden stick. She hums softly, dipping her fingers into the oil and smoothing it over her arms. When she notices you, she gestures gently for you to come nearer. She dips her fingers once more and brushes a tiny amount of oil onto your forearm. The sensation surprises you. The oil does not feel heavy. Instead, it spreads lightly across your skin, leaving a faint coolness that deepens as the breeze touches it. She reaches for another jar and opens it. A sharp but pleasant scent rises from within, something like a mix of mint and pine. She explains quietly that this blend is used when the nights are especially stifling. A few drops rubbed behind the ears and along the neck can help the body feel lighter. You inhale gently over the jar. The aroma lifts your senses, clearing the heaviness of the night from your thoughts. Beside her, a young man prepares small cones of scented wax. He shapes each cone with careful fingers, forming a smooth peak at the top. These cones are meant to be placed on the head, where the body's warmth slowly melts them. The melted fragrance drips gradually across the hair and skin, offering cooling relief for hours. You watch him shape the cones with quiet concentration. He dips his thumb in a bowl of oil to soften the wax between steps, then rolls the cone on a flat stone to give it symmetry. A small tale whispered through villages drifts into your mind. Some people believed that lotus-scented cones encouraged gentle dreams, especially on nights when heat made rest difficult. Whether the claim grew from imagined comfort or from real experience, The idea feels true after breathing in the fragrance around you. You continue watching the young man. When he finishes shaping a cone, he places it upright on a tray beside a row of others. The cones stand like tiny sculptures glowing faintly under the lamps. Their surface catches the light in delicate highlights. You pick one up and roll it gently between your fingers. It feels slightly cool despite the warm night. Not far away, a group of women crush dried petals using a small stone mortar. The rhythmic grinding brings more scents into the air. One woman pauses and lifts a handful of the powder to her face. She lets the scent linger for a moment, closes her eyes, and smiles. You sit nearby and watch their hands work. The grinding is slow but deliberate, a soft percussion that blends with the nighttime sounds of insects and wind. Another woman melts a small piece of resin over a lantern flame. When it softens into a thick syrup, she mixes it into the bowl of petals. The mixture creates a sticky paste used to scent sleeping cloths. She spreads the paste onto a linen scrap, and then presses another cloth on top. The scent will transfer gently through the layers during the night. A few steps away, a man tends to a bowl filled with water infused with essential oils. He dips a small reed into the mixture and flicks droplets into the air. The droplets catch the lantern light before disappearing into the night. He repeats the motion slowly, letting the scent settle across the sleeping area like a blanket of calm. When the breeze carries the fragrance toward you, it washes over your senses with a refreshing sweetness. You move closer to the man and watch him swirl the reed in the bowl. The oil leaves shimmering patterns on the water's surface. He tells you that families prepare different blends depending on the season and the needs of the household. On the hottest nights, cooling oils like mint, blue lotus, and sweet myrtle are favored. When humidity rises, people add cedar or juniper to keep the air feeling fresh. Two men nearby speak quietly about how much oil to use each night. One insists that a light touch is best, so the scent can float gently through the space. The other likes a heavier aroma, especially when people gather in close quarters. Their conversation reminds you of the way modern experts sometimes debate which aromatic compounds provided the most relief. Some believe the cooling comes from evaporation on the skin. Others think the psychological comfort mattered more. Watching these men, you suspect both were true. You stand and wander toward a long bench where several clay lamps glow steadily. Their flames reflect softly in bowls of scented oil placed nearby. You lift one bowl and swirl it slowly. The fragrance rises like warm silk. You trail your fingers through the surface and bring them to your face. The scent lingers faintly, soft and steady. A young girl approaches carrying a small bundle of herbs tied with string. She places it at the foot of a sleeping mat and adjusts the corners with careful hands. The bundle releases a floral aroma that blends with the surrounding fragrances. She smiles shyly as she finishes, then moves to help her mother prepare another mat. The space soon fills with a calm, layered scent. It soothes without overwhelming. You take a seat near one of the lamps and let the smells drift around you. The cooling oils settle on your skin. The fragrant air makes your eyelids feel heavy. The sounds of grinding herbs and quiet conversation fade into the background. You feel as if you are sitting in the heart of the night, wrapped in a blend of scent, warmth, and gentle relief. Families begin settling onto their mats. Some rub their arms with fragrant oil. Others place cones carefully onto their hair. A few wave the scented air toward themselves with slow, practiced motions. The night seems to deepen around them, softened by aroma and oil. You stand, absorbing the final traces of cooling scent lingering on your skin. As you step away, the fragrances remain behind you like a quiet echo, fading into the warm breeze. You continue into the Egyptian night, carrying a soft veil of lotus and mint with every step. You leave the scented gathering behind and wander toward the darker outline of a long residential street where the faint glow of scattered oil lamps dots the edges like flickering stars pressed against the earth. The air feels warmer again, but quieter. As you walk, you notice the soft chorus of nighttime sounds beginning to rise around you. They swirl in gentle layers, forming the soundtrack of Egyptian nights that countless people fell asleep to. You slow your pace, letting each sound settle into your awareness. First comes the steady croak of frogs in the distance, carried from the river banks. Their calls move in waves, rising and dipping in patterns that feel rhythmic enough to calm your pulse. Then you hear a low murmur of voices from a courtyard where someone is finishing a late meal. The sound is soft and intimate, like the hum of a family settling into rest. You step forward and catch the rustling of palm leaves overhead as a mild breeze pushes through them. The fronds move with a whispering sound that feels almost alive, like the forest itself is breathing. You pause beneath the tree and close your eyes, letting the rustle settle into the space between your breaths. A familiar detail recorded in many studies of ancient Egyptian daily life drifts into your thoughts. The nights were never perfectly silent. People slept through a blend of natural and human-made sounds that shaped their dreams and comfort. Rest did not require silence. It required familiarity. And for Egyptians, the sounds of the night became a kind of lullaby. You walk on, and soon another sound joins the chorus. The gentle splashing of water against clay jars. You look to your left and see a small fountain trickling in the courtyard of a wealthier home. The water loops continuously through a narrow channel carved from stone. The trickle echoes lightly through the cool courtyard air. A servant sits nearby, adjusting the angle of the water to keep the sound steady. For some families, the presence of moving water brought peace, especially during hot seasons. A few homes away, the rhythmic tapping of a loom reaches your ears. A middle-aged woman sits on her rooftop, finishing a piece of fabric under lamplight. The soft, quick taps create a delicate beat that blends with the other sounds around you. Her movements are slow but tireless, the kind made easy by muscle memory. You stand quietly, absorbing the cadence of her work. Then comes the sound of distant hoofbeats. You turn your head and see a man leading a donkey through the street. Its steps fall in a slow, almost sleepy rhythm. Each hoof meets the packed earth with a thud softened by layers of dust. The man hums a low tune as he walks, guiding the animal toward a nearby stall. The donkey snorts once, then settles into an even slower rhythm, its tail swishing at the night air. As you continue wandering, you notice a low hum of insects, less aggressive than the buzzing of day but still prominent. Their sound rises in droning waves that merge into an ambient haze. The insects cling to the heat, lingering in the walls and stones. Their music provides a backdrop to the softer noises of human life. You lift your hand to feel the air. It holds a warm vibration that matches the sound around you. You take a deep breath and stroll farther into the settlement. A pair of boys sit on a rooftop plucking strings on a small instrument. The melody they create is simple, perhaps an improvised tune they have repeated night after night. Their soft notes drift through the open air. You can almost feel how the music brings a sense of unity to the quiet landscape. From behind a mud brick wall, you hear the gentle clinking of pottery. Someone is stacking jars for the next day. A man hums quietly while he works. The sound is so steady that you find yourself moving in rhythm with it as you pass. The air around the wall feels cooler, hinting at a small water channel hidden on the other side. You pause near another courtyard where a mother sings to her child. The lullaby floats into the night with a softness that overrides the persistent heat. Her voice rises and falls, wrapping around the child like a protective cloak. You feel your breath matching the pace of her song. You imagine countless mothers across the ages soothing their children in similar ways. A bit of old lore passes through your mind. Some villagers believed that nighttime sounds carried the stories of the gods. The croak of frogs represented the rise of life. The rustle of palms echoed divine whispers. Even the hum of insects was thought to be a reminder of the earth's never-ending energy. Whether literal or symbolic, the belief gave depth to every sound. It added meaning to the ordinary. You walk deeper into the neighborhood, where the scent of warming bread still lingers from earlier meals. The night is calm. In the dimness, a few dogs settle near doorways. Their soft panting joins the ambient night sounds. One dog lifts its head as you approach, then lowers it again after deciding you pose no threat. You smile at how seamlessly animals blend into the nighttime rhythm. Nearby, a group of elders sits in a semicircle, engaged in quiet conversation. Their voices mix with the hum of cicadas. They speak about the temperature, the day's work, and the slight breeze that began about an hour ago. Their tone is relaxed, warm. They do not need silence to rest. They simply pace their voices with the night. A warm draft moves past your legs, reminding you that the heat has not fully given way. But the sounds distract you from its weight. They create a buffer between you and the day's harshness. You look up at the night sky. The stars shine clearly, unobstructed by humidity. Their silent glow contrasts the layered noises below. You turn down a narrow passage where the soundscape changes again. A thin trickle of water flows along a small trench cut into the ground. The sound is subtle but steady. You crouch and run your hand over the trickle. It feels cool enough to soothe your fingers. Someone walks past holding a small pot, letting the water fill it halfway. The quiet splash blends perfectly with the night. Another rooftop catches your attention. Several people lie there already resting. Someone shifts slightly, creating a quiet rustle of cloth. Another roll of movement sends a faint creak through the wooden frame. A baby coughs once, then settles again. These small, almost imperceptible sounds feel like the final strokes in the night's composition. You wander toward a group of palm trees at the street's end. Their leaves sway again, catching the light in faint flickers. Under them rests a sleeping family. You hear their deep breaths, steady and slow. One person sighs softly, rolling onto a cooler patch of mat. The breeze filters down through the trees, shaping the night air into a lighter, smoother sensation. You sit beside the palms and close your eyes. The symphony of sounds continues around you. Clicks, hums, whispers, creaks, splashes, croaks, and faint songs. Each one blends into the next, becoming a textured blanket of noise that comforts without overwhelming. You breathe deeply, letting the sounds take root in your mind. You can imagine falling asleep here, wrapped in the gentle chorus that defined countless Egyptian nights. It is neither silence nor chaos. It is balance. When you finally rise, the sounds follow you for several steps. They cling to the air like familiar hands, guiding you deeper into the night, preparing you for whatever comes next. You leave the cluster of palm trees behind and wander into a quieter avenue where the glow of lanterns fades and the silhouettes of houses stretch against the night sky. The air is warm again, thick enough that your clothing clings lightly to your skin, but you feel a shift in the rhythm around you. Ahead, faint footsteps echo in a sheltered courtyard, accompanied by the soft scrape of pottery and whispered conversation. You move toward the sound, drawn by the sense that something purposeful is happening there. When you step through the arched entrance, you see several figures moving with slow, deliberate motions. Their shadows glide across mud-brick walls in long shapes, stretching and shrinking as lanterns flicker. These are the servants of the household, preparing the sleeping spaces for the night. Their tasks are gentle and unhurried. Each motion feels like part of a ritual crafted through generations. A young servant spreads a linen sheet across a raised platform, smoothing the edges with practiced hands. Beside him, another shakes out a woven mat, letting dust fall silently into the courtyard floor. The night breeze lifts the edges of the fabric, helping him. You watch as he folds the corners in precise angles, his movements guided by both habit and subtle intuition. A detail often noted in studies of Egyptian households comes to your mind while observing this quiet choreography. In larger homes, servants played a significant role in evening routines, handling tasks that ensured comfort in the intense heat. They aired bedding, prepared scented oils, and arranged furniture to capture the coolest breezes. Their work took place between sunset and moonrise, shaping the comfort of their employers through the long summer night. You step closer and notice a woman preparing a pallet near a window. She wipes the wooden frame with a damp cloth, removing traces of dust that accumulate during the day. She breathes softly as she works, pausing now and then to feel the airflow. Once she finds the right angle, she nods in satisfaction and places the mat exactly where the breeze falls strongest. Her hands are steady, experienced. In the far corner of the courtyard, an older servant stirs a bowl filled with water. He dips a folded linen cloth into it, wrings it carefully, and then drapes it along a wooden rail. As the cloth dries, it will cool the surrounding air and send a fresh scent into the space. You move closer and feel the faint chill rising from the evaporating moisture. It surprises you with how effective it feels against your warm skin. A small detail whispered by families over generations comes to your thoughts. Some believed that the calm energy of servants spreading bedding and tending household spaces attracted peaceful dreams. Whether rooted in superstition or gratitude, the idea feels fitting as you watch the gentle flow of their work. Sitting on a low bench near the wall is a woman grinding dried flowers into a soft powder. She mixes it with a drizzle of oil to create a fragrant paste. With nimble fingers, she smooths the mixture into the edges of a sleeping mat. This will release a cooling aroma through the night. You lean closer and catch a whiff of lotus and desert herbs. It calms your senses instantly. Several children peek from a doorway, watching the adults. One boy tiptoes across the courtyard, carrying a clay cup of water. He hands it to the woman with a proud smile. She pats his shoulder and adds a few drops into her bowl. The boy beams as though he has helped cool the entire night. As you watch, you notice another task unfolding. A servant adjusts the position of a palm leaf fan mounted near the sleeping area. The fan is not moved manually but angled so the night breeze will strike it and create additional airflow over the sleepers. You admire this simple but ingenious solution. He ties the fan to a wooden pole, tests its movement, and steps back to observe. From a nearby doorway, two men emerge carrying a long wooden frame. They lower it gently near the courtyard's open side. This frame will become the sleeping space for the head of the household. They adjust the legs until the bed sits slightly tilted, angled perfectly to catch the night breeze that slips between the walls. The men murmur to each other softly, exchanging observations about the wind's direction. A passing thought touches your mind. Some historians still discuss how much control households had over nightly airflow. Were these arrangements deliberately engineered or simply improvised through experience? Watching the servants, you realize that trial, error, and instinct blended seamlessly into a single nightly wisdom. They test the breeze, listen to the environment, and adapt without hesitation. A clay jar stands beside the bed frame, half filled with cool water drawn earlier from a shaded storage room. A servant dips a reed whisk into it and fans droplets into the air, encouraging a brief burst of coolness. The droplets catch the lantern glow before vanishing into the warm night air. Near the far wall, a young woman arranges small bowls of herbs. She sets them at the corners of the sleeping mats to keep insects away. Her hands move in graceful arcs. She pauses at one bowl, adjusting the blend of mint and crushed flowers. The aroma rises like a sigh of relief. You watch her distribute the bowls and then turn toward another servant who is gently combing the sleeping linens. He lifts small cloth pieces one by one and brushes them with a smooth stick to remove dust. His movements create a whispering sound against the fabric. The soft repetition makes your eyes feel heavy with calm. A faint conversation rises near the entrance. Two servants discuss which areas of the courtyard stayed cooler during the previous night. One swears the spot near the fig tree caught the softest breeze. The other insists that the corner by the wooden table stayed comfortable longest. Their discussion echoes a quiet uncertainty shared across many generations. Even with deep experience, nights changed subtly. Breezes shifted, temperatures fluctuated. But families adapted through attentive observation. You wander to the center of the courtyard where a shallow basin holds fresh water. A servant dips her hands into it and sprinkles droplets around the area. The water darkens the earth in irregular patches. Its evaporation will bring a thin layer of coolness across the ground. You kneel beside the basin and trail your fingers in the water. It feels as though it has been drawn from the river only moments ago. The lanterns around you grow dimmer as servants finish their tasks. Their voices quieten. One extinguishes a lamp and leaves a pool of moonlight in its place. Another folds a woven cloth and places it neatly beside a mat. The final movements feel like the finishing breaths of a long ritual. A faint breeze drifts through the courtyard, catching the linen sheets and making them flutter softly. You stand still, letting the moment sink into your senses. The servants retreat slowly into inner rooms. They have shaped the night into a space of rest, comfort, and calm. Without them, the household would face the heat unprepared. With them, even the warmest night becomes survivable. You take one last look at the arranged mats, the fragrant herbs, the angled fans, and the carefully placed jars of cool water. Everything feels ready. The night has been tamed just enough. You step away from the courtyard, leaving behind the quiet artistry of those who prepare the world for sleep. You leave the servants' courtyard behind and follow a wide path that leads toward a quieter district of the settlement. The houses here grow larger, their walls smoother, and their doorways framed with carved beams. Lanterns burn with steadier flames. The air even feels a touch lighter, as if wealth itself changes the texture of the night. You slow your steps, knowing you are about to witness the difference between how ordinary families slept through brutal summer heat and how the elite faced the same challenge. A soft murmur of voices drifts from a large courtyard ahead. You slip inside and immediately feel the change. The courtyard is far more open than those you passed earlier. Tall columns support an open canopy of woven reeds that lets night air sweep through freely. The breeze here feels stronger, shaped by wide spaces instead of narrow alleys. You pause beneath one of the columns and look upward. The canopy patterns the moonlight across the floor in wide, gentle stripes. To your right lies a raised sleeping platform large enough for several mats. A linen curtain hangs loosely around part of it, fluttering like a pale ribbon whenever the wind brushes past. A pair of young women adjusts the curtain, testing how it catches the air. When they step aside, the curtain floats softly inward. You smile, knowing the airflow will wash across whoever sleeps there tonight. A well-known observation from ancient Egyptian records appears in your thoughts. Wealthy households often enjoyed cooler nights due to more spacious construction, multiple courtyards, and higher rooftops that caught stronger breezes. But coolness did not belong only to the rich. It simply manifested differently. Where poorer homes relied on narrow vents and ground-level airflow, elite homes created open spaces that welcomed the wind. You walk farther into the courtyard and examine a wooden frame covered with smooth linen. It rests on raised supports carved in gentle curves. The frame looks elegant, almost ceremonial. When you lay a hand on it, the wood feels polished, as if someone oil-treated it regularly. A young servant smooths the linen sheet and sprinkles a handful of fragrant powder across the corners. In the shadow of the far wall, you notice something that catches your breath. A large ceramic water vessel sits in a carved niche, placed so the breeze passes directly over its damp surface. The evaporation cools the surrounding air, sending a fresh current toward the sleeping platform. The placement is not accidental. Someone understood the wind's path and arranged these vessels to make the most of it. You take a slow step toward the vessel and brush your fingertips across its surface. It feels cool, even more than the jars you touched earlier. The niche around it amplifies the effect, creating a pocket of refreshing air. You imagine an elite family reclining nearby while servants gently fan the air if the night became unbearably warm. Two men stand near the center of the courtyard discussing something in low voices. You listen and soon realize they are debating the ideal placement of the sleeping platforms. One believes the platform should be positioned close to the open side of the courtyard to catch stronger breezes. The other insists on keeping it near the cooling vessel to benefit from the evaporated moisture. Their conversation mirrors a familiar modern uncertainty about how ancient elites optimized nightly comfort. The answer likely shifted with each season, each house, each night. As you walk past them, a girl carries a small basket filled with fresh lotus petals. She scatters the petals near the sleeping platforms with soft, patient motions. Their scent rises slowly into the air, adding a gentle freshness that lingers without overwhelming. She smiles when she notices you watching, then continues her task with a quiet grace. You wander into the attached hallway, drawn by a faint shimmer of lamplight. The hallway opens into a decorated chamber. Here lies another sleeping arrangement, smaller and more private. The bed occupies the center of the room, framed by carved wooden posts. Woven mats hang on the walls, absorbing heat that would otherwise radiate into the sleeping space. A servant adjusts one mat, tapping it lightly to check for dryness. When he turns, he sees you and steps aside politely. A small bowl rests on a low table beside the bed. Inside it floats a mixture of oils. You lean closer and smell hints of marjoram and sweet myrtle. Someone will use this blend to cool their skin before resting. A folded cloth lies beside the bowl, neatly arranged for easy reach. You imagine a household member dipping the cloth lightly into the mixture and smoothing the cool liquid along their temples and arms. You step back into the hallway and return to the courtyard, where several children sit eating slices of chilled melon. One child wipes her face with her sleeve and laughs as juice drips down her chin. The melon must have been kept in a cooling chamber earlier. Even small luxuries like this transformed the night into something gentler. As you stroll deeper into the elite district, you pass another large home and hear faint musical notes drifting from an upper balcony. Someone is playing a small harp. The delicate melody floats through the air like a ribbon of silver. The soft plucking of strings makes you pause. Music, especially in wealthier homes, often accompanied evening rest. Families enjoyed short performances or gentle tunes played by household musicians. The next courtyard you explore offers a sharp contrast to everything you saw earlier. Here the sleeping platforms line a long, open-air gallery. Each platform sits beneath a slanted wooden frame designed to direct breezes downward toward the sleepers. The frames act like funnels, catching higher winds that skim the rooftops and channeling them gently below. You stand beneath one and feel the faint, river-like flow of air sliding past your arms. A pot of chilled water rests near the gallery. A servant dips a cloth into it and wrings it thoroughly before draping it over a wooden beam. The breeze passes through the damp cloth, cooling the air as it moves. The effect feels like walking into a pocket of early morning air. You settle there for a moment, letting the coolness wash over you. Then, as you stand quietly, you hear a softer commotion from the far corner of the courtyard. A group of women prepares a sleeping area for their mistress. They adjust linen pillows stuffed with soft plant fiber. They brush the mats gently to remove stray dust. One of them places a shallow bowl of scented water at the head of the bed. Another adjusts a curtain to filter the moonlight. You observe their calm, respectful movements. It strikes you how important nightly rest was to everyone, regardless of wealth. Yet wealth shaped rest differently. Here the solutions are expansive. Open courtyards, large vessels, music, scented oils, shaded galleries. In poorer homes, comfort relied on clever placement and small rituals. Both groups fought the same heat, but with different tools. A servant steps forward carrying a small clay jar. She opens it and the scent of cool mint floats upward. She brushes a tiny amount along the wooden frame of the bed, leaving a shimmering trace. She repeats the motion with slow care, ensuring the fragrance will rise throughout the night. You stand a long moment watching the quiet bustle. The lanterns flicker softly. The breeze surrounding the courtyard moves steadily, filled with scent and movement. As the final touches are added, the servants step aside. The courtyards settle into stillness, waiting for sleepers to arrive. You turn and leave the elite district behind, stepping once more into the mixed warmth of the night. You glance back only once and see the silhouettes of wide courtyards and angled frames catching the moonlight. In contrast, the dark rooftops of ordinary homes rise behind them, steady and familiar. The two worlds blend together in the same desert heat, each shaping its own version of the night. As you walk away, You feel a deeper understanding of how Egyptians faced the fiercest summers. Comfort varied, solutions differed, but the desire for coolness, rest, and serenity was universal. And each family, whether wealthy or humble, found its own way to carve peace out of the heat. You step out of the elite district and follow a path that rises gradually toward the rooftops and open fields beyond the settlement. The night stretches wide here, and the sky opens above you like a vast bowl sprinkled with glowing sand. For a moment you simply stand still, letting the expanse wash over you. The stars feel close enough to touch. Their silver sheen reflects across the desert and softens the lingering heat with a quiet beauty no structure could ever offer. You climb a small incline and find yourself standing on a wide rooftop overlooking the river and the distant flicker of lamps in scattered homes. The air here feels easier to breathe. A soft, steady breeze glides along your arms, carrying the faint scent of dust, palm leaves, and distant water. You tilt your head back and take in the full canvas of the sky. Constellations form their ancient shapes, tracing animals, ships, and wandering figures across the darkness. A commonly noted detail from historical records surfaces in your thoughts. Ancient Egyptians were remarkably skilled sky watchers. Their observation of stars was not only tied to farming and festivals, but also shaped their understanding of the night itself. People often slept outdoors during the hottest months, and as a result, stars became familiar companions, silent guides that offered comfort long before sleep arrived. You walk across the rooftop and sit near the edge, letting your legs dangle slightly. You run your fingers along the warm mud brick beneath you. The breeze pushes gently at your back and hair. Above, the stars drift in patterns that feel calm, steady, and ancient. You imagine lying here night after night, learning the rhythm of the constellations as naturally as learning the rhythm of breath. Off to your left, a small family settles onto their mats. The father lies on his side, pointing upward to show his daughter the bright curve of a star cluster. She follows his gesture with wide eyes. The mother laughs softly, then reclines beside them. Their silhouettes blend with the glow of the starlight, creating a scene both intimate and timeless. You shift your gaze as a streak of light sweeps briefly across the sky. A shooting star vanishes almost as soon as it appears. A faint gasp rises from a neighboring rooftop where two boys sit watching the heavens. They whisper excitedly, turning the moment into a tiny celebration. You smile, knowing that even in a world without electric lights, the sky offered entertainment that never aged. You lean back on your hands and feel the cool, dry breeze move across your chest. It sweeps upward again, brushing your cheeks. The air here feels freer than in the courtyards below. It moves as it pleases, unblocked by walls or narrow alleys. You understand now why rooftop sleeping became such a beloved part of summer nights. Here the stars keep watch while the wind keeps company. A soft humming sound reaches you from the rooftop next to yours. You turn to see a woman sitting with a small object in her lap. She traces her fingers along a series of carved marks, whispering a quiet song that follows the path of the stars above. Some families believed the heavens offered protection during the night. Others thought the stars guided dreams. Her whisper suggests she belongs to the latter group. A small anecdote passed down through generations now drifts into your thoughts. It is said that shepherds and travelers often used the position of the star Sopdet to decide when to begin nighttime journeys during summer months. The star's rise not only signaled the coming flood of the Nile, but also told them when the air would feel safest for long hours outdoors. Whether exact or embellished over time, the idea underscores how deeply the sky shaped daily habits. You lie back fully now, stretching across the warm rooftop. The sky above you fills your entire field of vision. The Milky Way spills faint light across the darkness. You feel the earth beneath you slowly releasing the memory of the day's heat. Your breath settles into rhythm with the environment. A distant owl calls from a cluster of palm trees. The sound feels perfectly placed. From the rooftop behind you, two older men begin discussing the movement of the stars. One claims the bright cluster near the horizon marks the time when the night breeze becomes strongest. The other argues that the cooling begins only when a particular star rises above the rooftops. Their debate mirrors a lively question still discussed by modern researchers. How much did people rely on actual sky patterns for nightly cooling routines, and how much came from cultural belief? Standing here, you sense both perspectives blend naturally into lived experience. You rise again and move toward a low parapet wall. You rest your forearms on the warm surface and gaze across the landscape. The river glimmers in the distance, catching thin strokes of moonlight. Beyond it lie dark fields dotted with faint lamplight from distant hamlets. The breeze here grows cooler, shaped by both the open sky and the open space stretching beyond the settlement. You take a deep breath of that cool air, and your lungs feel lighter. You imagine an Egyptian farmer lying here after a long day in the sun, letting the stars lull him into a kind of drifting meditation. With no electricity, no artificial glow, the night sky becomes sharper, quieter, and far more present. You wander to the opposite side of the rooftop, where a few young women sit combing their hair in the moonlight. Their movements are slow and relaxed. One pauses, looking up as if she recognizes a pattern in the stars. Another joins her gaze, and they begin discussing how a particular constellation resembles a bird. Their conversation blends with the breeze, creating a little pocket of serenity. Near the center of the rooftop, a family has arranged their sleeping mats. One mat faces north, another faces west. You approach and feel how the wind shifts around them depending on direction. You sense how years of watching the sky taught Egyptians where to lie for the most cooling breeze. Knowledge passed through instinct rather than instruction. You kneel beside a small clay bowl set near a sleeping mat. Inside lies a pinch of crushed petals. The fragrance is faint but soothing. Beside it rests a carved wooden plaque with symbols that reflect celestial patterns. Someone placed these items together deliberately, blending ritual comfort with the tranquility of the stars. You stretch your legs out again and recline, letting the sky fill your eyes. The stars shift imperceptibly as time passes. You hear nothing but the occasional chirp of night insects and the soft murmur of distant voices. The air cools your arms each time the breeze returns. It feels as though the sky itself is breathing with you. Slowly, the rooftop world grows quieter. Mats rustle softly as people settle in. A baby fusses briefly before calming under a mother's soothing touch. A man shifts his position, seeking the cooler spot where the breeze brushes stronger. Someone whispers a short prayer to the stars. You take another long breath. The sky invites you deeper into the quiet. The rhythm of the night settles around you like a soft blanket. You understand now that for ancient Egyptians, the heavens did more than guide farmers or mark festivals. The stars offered comfort, structure, and companionship on nights when the heat lingered stubbornly. As you stand to continue your journey, you look back at the rooftop one last time. Dozens of starlit silhouettes lie resting in the open, lulled by cosmic patterns older than memory. You carry that peace with you as you walk on, guided forward by the quiet glow of the ancient sky. You walk down from the rooftop, leaving the starlit stillness behind as you descend a short mud brick staircase. The night air thickens again once you reach the lower alleys, carrying the weight of summer even after hours of darkness. But something in the atmosphere feels subtly different. You sense a shift in rhythm, a quiet rearranging of how people move, breathe, and rest as the seasons change. The routines of a cool spring night do not match those of a blazing summer. Egyptians adjusted their habits with a kind of instinctive precision, shaped by many generations of watching the heat rise and fall. You follow a path toward the edge of a wide courtyard, where a cluster of families sits preparing for sleep. Their conversation floats softly on the air. One man mentions that the temperature had risen earlier than usual this year. Another replies that he moved his mat to the riverbank the night before because the rooftops felt too warm to endure. Seasonal adjustment was not just a preference, it was a necessary part of surviving in a land where daytime heat could push the limits of comfort. A widely accepted detail about Egyptian life comes to mind as you listen. During the hottest part of the year, people often shifted their schedules dramatically. Work began before sunrise, pauses at midday became routine, and nighttime became a precious window for both cooling and productivity. Sleep, too, followed seasonal patterns. Families learned to divide sleep into portions, taking longer rests at night and sometimes brief naps during the heat of the afternoon. You watch a woman spread a light reed mat near a shaded wall. She places it carefully at an angle she knows will remain cool until sunrise. During the mild days of spring, she might not have bothered with such precision. But in the season when temperatures climb steadily above what bodies can bear, every detail matters. Children nearby practice rolling their mats tightly, laughing as they try to create perfect cylinders. Their father watches fondly while adjusting a clay pot of cooled water. He tilts it slightly, checking how much condensation clings to its surface. The pot was stored in a shaded room all day, preserved for the late hours when people needed refreshing drinks before sleep. You move toward a corner where two women sit preparing a mixture of crushed herbs. They speak quietly about whether to include cedar tonight. One thinks the air is too hot and prefers mint for its cooling scent. The other believes the temperature will drop more than expected after midnight, and insists cedar will make the air feel steadier. Their discussion reflects the constant guessing game of seasonal nights. No one knew exactly when the temperature would shift, only that the shift would come. A little beyond them, a boy helps his grandfather spread out a woven blanket thinner than linen. The elder explains that this blanket is only for the early months of summer, when nights still carry a touch of chill before dawn. By midsummer, even this thin layer would be too much. The boy listens intently, soaking up knowledge the same way he breathes the warm air. Each generation learned how to read the season through touch, habit, and lived memory. You continue through the courtyard as a faint breeze stirs, brushing softly against your face. It carries the scent of warm dust and distant water. You turn your head slightly, knowing the breeze is a sign that the night is beginning to shift. A woman nearby notices the movement of her hanging cloth and rises to adjust her sleeping spot. The cloth now billows gently, catching air that did not exist minutes earlier. She nods in approval and settles her mat accordingly. Another cluster of people sits near a row of clay jars. They debate tomorrow's plans. One man suggests waking an hour earlier to avoid the rising heat while farming. Another warns that if the winds change, early mornings could bring unexpected warmth. They speak with the ease of people who have learned to respect the season's unpredictability. The heat demanded flexibility, not rigid routine. As you continue walking, you spot a small group of elders sitting beneath a trellis of vines. Their faces glow in the lantern light. One elder explains how, as a young man, he used to sleep close to the river every night throughout midsummer. Another recalls climbing the roof beams to rest as high as possible in hopes of catching cooler breezes. Their stories weave a picture of seasonal life that blends tradition and personal experiment. A quiet disagreement arises among them. One elder insists the river provides the best cooling in late summer. The others believe rooftops hold more comfort when humidity rises. Their discussion mirrors a gentle academic debate still lingering today. Which seasonal environment offered the most relief? Evidence suggests multiple answers, shaped by region, weather patterns, and personal preference. You leave them behind and approach a low wall where a group of teens tries to decide whether to sleep indoors or outdoors. One girl points to the sky, saying the stars appear sharper tonight, meaning the air is dry and suitable for rooftop sleeping. Another says the breeze seems weak, making indoor rooms feel less stifling. Their conversation is light-hearted, but you hear the echo of an ancient seasonal awareness that guided their choices. On the opposite side of the courtyard, a pair of boys fill small bowls with water and place them in various corners to enhance evaporation. They laugh as they race between the bowls, trying to finish before their grandmother finishes preparing the mats. The bowls will cool the air slightly, creating pockets of relief throughout the courtyard. In spring, they might use fewer bowls. In midsummer, they use every one they can find. A mother nearby unrolls a long linen sheet. She shakes it once, letting the warm night air slip through its fibers. She explains to her daughter that in early summer they lay the sheet loosely so the wind can pass beneath it. But later in the season, when the air grows dense, they use the sheet only as a light covering, never tucked, always free. The girl nods, committing the advice to memory. You wander toward the courtyard entrance, where a cluster of men inspect the sky. They speak about how the heat has lingered later this year. One points at a dim star near the horizon, saying it rises earlier now because the season is shifting. Another shakes his head, claiming the wind patterns tell the true story. Their quiet disagreement highlights a long-standing tension between celestial and atmospheric interpretation. People relied on both, but neither offered perfect predictions. You step out onto the main path again and walk among the houses, feeling the warmth cling to your skin. But now you understand the deeper rhythm hidden within these nights. Egyptians adjusted to the seasons constantly. They shifted sleep times, rearranged mats, changed their cooling techniques, and balanced instinct with observation. A mild breeze returns and flows over your arms. You close your eyes and let it settle. The night is alive with subtle changes, each one guiding how people rest. You walk on, carrying the understanding that comfort in Egypt was not static. It was a dance with the seasons, performed every night in the warm embrace of the desert air. You continue walking along the warm path, feeling the night loosen around you as the wind shifts once again. A faint glimmer of lamplight flickers ahead, guiding you toward a quiet space nestled between two broad houses. The air feels heavier here, as though carrying ancient thoughts, stories, and hopes. When you step inside the shaded courtyard, you notice the gentle arrangement of small objects placed near mats, jars, and low wooden altars. Something about the atmosphere urges you to slow down, to tread carefully, as if stepping into a place where dreams and beliefs still mingle in the darkness. A family sits near the center, their faces calm and reflective. One woman holds a carved wooden amulet shaped like a rounded figure with wide, open eyes. She rubs it gently with her thumb before placing it beside her sleeping mat. Another person hangs a small papyrus charm above the doorway. Its fibers flutter slightly in the shifting air. Near the opposite wall, someone traces a symbol in the dust with quiet intention before smoothing it away again. These gestures carry the weight of something deeply embedded in Egyptian life, a conviction that restful nights and safe dreams were tied to forces beyond the visible world. A frequently noted detail from Egyptian spiritual practice returns to your mind. Daily life, even at its most ordinary, was intertwined with symbols of protection and well-being. Images of deities appeared in homes not out of formality, but from genuine belief that such figures helped guide, soothe, or defend in unseen ways. Sleep, vulnerable and unpredictable, felt like a time when connection to the unseen world grew more present. You kneel near a mat where someone has left a small clay figurine shaped like a reclining lion. Its carved mane spreads behind its head in straight lines. The figurine faces the direction where the breeze comes in, as though keeping watch. You imagine someone placing it here each night, trusting it to guard the dreams of anyone who lies nearby. On another mat rests a painted wooden plaque showing the silhouette of a boat gliding across a band of blue. You run your fingers gently along its smooth edge. The image reflects the belief that the night journey resembled a river voyage. Sleep was a crossing, dreams were waters, and protection meant safe passage through the unseen currents. Someone must have placed this plaque here with the hope that the night would be calm and the dreams gentle. A quiet conversation drifts from the far side of the courtyard, where two women sit preparing a mixture using a shallow bowl. They combine oil with ground petals and crushed herbs. As you approach, the fragrant mixture rises into the air, soft and sweet. One woman dips her fingertip into the bowl and touches it lightly to her forehead. The other does the same, then applies a faint streak along the edge of her sleeping mat. You recognize the blend as something meant to encourage peaceful dreams and bring a cooling sensation to the skin. A moment from local tradition surfaces in your thoughts. Some communities believed that placing a small drop of cooling oil on the forehead before sleep helped calm the heart and settle the spirit. Whether symbolic or simply soothing, the gesture offered comfort on nights when heat made rest difficult. You walk toward the far edge of the courtyard where a small shrine stands against the wall. It is simple, made of clay and smoothed by time. At its base sit offerings: a few dried flowers, a piece of bread, a fragment of lotus stem. A young man kneels in front of it, eyes closed. His lips move slowly, forming soft words meant for no audience but the night. When he finishes, he stands and adjusts a linen curtain above the shrine to ensure the breeze flows gently across it. Another figure approaches the shrine later, this time an older woman carrying a clay pendant on a thin rope. She touches the pendant to her forehead, then ties it gently around a wooden post. The symbol carved on it resembles a protective gesture often associated with safe dreams. You watch her movements, simple but layered with emotional meaning. Nearby, a father shows his son how to place a small painted stone under the corner of the sleeping mat. The boy watches with wide eyes as the father explains how the stone represents shelter on difficult nights. These gestures serve as both comfort and inheritance, passed from one generation to another. A soft breeze moves through the courtyard, fluttering the edges of linen curtains and stirring the scent of herbs spread across the mats. The air feels lighter now, cooled slightly by the night, and shaped by the calm routines of the people preparing for rest. You sit for a moment near the doorway, letting the subtle mixture of fragrance and quiet reverence settle into your chest. In the far corner, two elders sit discussing something with patient voices. One mentions how dream protection practices vary from household to household. Another says that some families place symbolic objects under pillows, while others prefer to hang charms at the entrance. Their conversation echoes the variety that scholars still note today when interpreting the meanings behind these rituals. Some suggest these practices were symbolic, others think they were deeply personal. The truth likely sits gently between these interpretations. You notice a young girl seated alone beside her small mat. She holds a lotus petal, turning it slowly between her fingers. She eventually places it at the head of her mat, smoothing it carefully against the woven fibers. She lies down on her stomach for a moment, head turned toward the petal, and whispers something only she can hear. Then she rises and folds her hands in her lap, peaceful and assured. You walk to the center of the courtyard and breathe deeply. The warm air carries a quiet sense of longing, faith, and simplicity. Nights in Egypt were not just challenges of heat, they were moments of transition, where the visible and unseen worlds met in quiet companionship. The absence of artificial light made the night feel larger, deeper. Sleep became a kind of voyage, and people shaped their environment to make that voyage gentle. As you prepare to leave, you take one last glance at the objects scattered with care across the mats and walls. Each item holds a story. Each placement carries intention. They do not push away the heat. They ease the spirit that must endure it. You step out of the courtyard, carrying with you the soft hum of belief that made ancient nights feel safer, cooler, and more connected to the world beyond dreams. You step back into the open night, leaving behind the quiet reverence of charms and dream blessings. The air feels heavier here, shaped by the steady pulse of human activity that does not fully stop, even after darkness settles. You follow a long street bordered by mud brick walls until the glow of a few distant lamps becomes your guide. A faint scraping sound echoes from somewhere ahead. You slow your steps, sensing you are approaching a part of Egyptian life that rarely rests: nighttime labor. As you walk, the sounds grow clearer. A potter's wheel spins somewhere behind a half-open door. A soft, rhythmic tapping suggests someone weaving nets or patching a reed mat. In a shaded courtyard, two men are pulling rope through a wooden frame, twisting it carefully. Their motions are deliberate and measured, working at a pace the heat will allow. Night is not only a time for rest. It is also a time when the world cools just enough for people to complete tasks that the sun would punish during daylight hours. A well-documented pattern in ancient Egyptian labor now rises in your thoughts. Many types of work shifted partially into the night during the hottest months. Farmers, builders, craftspeople, and servants learned to balance energy with temperature. Some tasks demanded daylight, but others could be done by lamplight or moonlight, freeing hours of early morning for additional rest. Sleep itself was flexible, adapting to the season rather than following strict schedules. You stop beside a family courtyard where a man repairs a broken basket. He sits cross-legged with a pile of palm strips beside him, weaving them into sturdy shapes. His wife grinds wheat on a stone slab, using slow, circular motions to reduce the grain into fine flour. She wipes sweat from her forehead and continues. Her expression is not one of fatigue but of focus. She wants to finish before the heat rises again. A child stirs beside them, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She sits near her mother and fans her softly with a palm leaf. The mother smiles but keeps working. You admire their teamwork, quiet and unspoken. Tasks at night become family rhythms when temperatures dictate how the hours unfold. You move farther along the alley and hear the faint ringing of metal on stone. You turn a corner and find a man sharpening a tool on a flat whetstone. Sparks flicker briefly each time he presses the blade. The light illuminates his determined expression. He pauses when a breeze brushes through, closing his eyes subtly as if savoring the faint coolness. Then he continues, pulling the blade along the stone surface in precise, practiced strokes. Across from him, another man rolls a heavy clay amphora toward a storage space. His movements are slow yet steady. He stops midway, breathing heavily. Sweat drips down his arms. Even at night, physical labor remains demanding, but his companion joins him, lifting the amphora from the base. Together they navigate the vessel through the doorway with a shared grunt. They laugh afterward, relieved. Their camaraderie softens the difficulty. A detail often mentioned in discussions of ancient labor practices comes to mind as you watch them. Work and rest existed on a kind of sliding scale. The hottest days created pockets of inactivity that had to be balanced by cooler nights. People did not push their bodies to dangerous limits simply because the sun offered light. They saved their strength for the hours that tolerated it. You continue your walk and find a rooftop where several young men work under the moonlight. One shapes clay tablets while another writes markings with a thin reed. A third man mixes pigment in a bowl, grinding minerals into powder and adding water sparingly. Their soft voices drift across the rooftop as they discuss the tasks of the next day. They laugh occasionally, sharing jokes that lighten the weight of labor. The scent of wet clay reaches you, grounding the moment in something honest and simple. Moving on, you step into a wide alley where a group of women carries large bundles of clothing. They gather around a shallow pool carved into the ground. You watch as they kneel and begin rinsing linen under cool water, beating each piece lightly against smoothed stones. The splashing sounds echo into the night. A faint scent of soap made from natron rises into the air. The women speak cheerfully as they work, exchanging stories and teasing each other. Their laughter becomes another rhythm in the night. You pause to watch them longer than you expect. There is something soothing about the mixture of motion, water, and chatter. It reminds you that nighttime was not only practical but also social. People found comfort in working together under the stars, where the heat felt less threatening and the world felt more forgiving. Not far away, an elderly man sweeps the alley with a wide broom made of stiff reeds. He moves methodically, pushing dust into neat piles. His motions create a gentle brushing sound. He pauses occasionally to lean on the broom handle, gazing at the moon as if drawing strength from its cool glow. Then he resumes, guided by decades of habit. You admire his patience. A small argument catches your attention from a doorway where two young men debate whether the night breeze will strengthen later. One insists it always does on nights like this. The other claims the wind has been stubborn and will remain weak. Their disagreement reflects a question that researchers still explore today. Did Egyptians follow predictable nighttime cycles? Or did they simply adjust in real time as the temperature dictated? Listening to them, You sense that flexibility mattered more than pattern. You continue onward and find a group of workers near a clay kiln. They sit in a circle, waiting for the interior temperature to drop low enough for them to safely remove newly fired pottery. A faint red glow pulses within the kiln. One worker dips a cloth into a jar of water and places it along his neck. Another massages his fingers after hours of shaping clay. They speak quietly about their progress, proud but cautious. You feel a respect for their endurance. Beyond them, two men tend to a row of animals. They lay fresh straw in shaded pens and brush dust from the hides of donkeys. One man wipes his brow with his sleeve, sighs, and leans against the pen. His companion jokes about the stubbornness of one particular donkey, and the two share a tired laugh. Even chores that must be done every day find a softer tone in the late hours. You reach the end of the alley and step into another courtyard where the glow of lamps reflects on several half-finished projects. A carpenter sands a wooden panel. A potter tests the rim of a new jar. A woman seals dried herbs into small clay containers. These tasks do not require the sun, only steady hands and patience. The night offers both. You notice that some people alternate between work and rest throughout the night. A man lying on a mat stands to help his wife move a basket, then lies down again moments later. Another sits listening to a neighbor's story while slowly mending a torn rope. The boundary between labor and relaxation blurs when the season demands flexibility. You stand in the center of all this activity and take a long breath. The warm air feels different now, shaped by shared motion and quiet purpose. The night is not silent or still. It is alive with cycles of work and rest that weave together seamlessly. People conserve their strength. They read the heat. They adapt without complaint. As you move away from the courtyard, the sounds of nighttime labor fade gradually into the hum of the warm air. You walk down a final passage, reflecting on how Egyptians transformed the dark hours into a space of resilience, cooperation, and survival. Sleep came when the world allowed it, shaped by necessity and season. You continue onward, carrying the hum of work and the softness of rest with you as the Egyptian night deepens. You leave behind the soft rhythm of nighttime labor and follow a curving path toward the outskirts of the settlement. The houses grow farther apart here, replaced by long fences built of woven reeds and low stone enclosures. The breeze carries a new mix of scents: warm hay, dusty fur, and faint traces of animals resting after a long day under the sun. As you walk farther, you begin to notice shapes shifting in the dimness. A pair of goats stir in their pen. A donkey shifts its weight and snorts softly. Somewhere a dog barks once, then settles again. You are approaching the part of the night where humans and animals share the same cooling strategies. A commonly acknowledged detail about ancient Egyptian life comes to your mind as the shadows around you move. Many families kept animals not far from their homes. Chickens, goats, donkeys, dogs, and sometimes cattle all lived within reach, shaping the soundscape, temperature, and rhythm of the night. Even cats wandered freely, welcomed for their ability to keep pests away. Animals were not separate from human comfort. They were part of the nightly ecosystem. You step into a small courtyard that houses several woven reed shelters. Chickens roost quietly on low beams. Their soft rustling fills the silence. You notice how the shelters stand slightly elevated above the ground, allowing the air to circulate beneath them. The design helps prevent heat from building up, even at night. A few hens shift their wings, fluffing feathers to release warmth. The simple sight explains how even small creatures sought relief in warm seasons. A little farther ahead, you find a donkey standing in the open air, tethered loosely to a post. It flicks its ears as you approach, reacting more to the breeze than to you. The animal looks at you with steady, patient eyes. Its coat, still warm from the day, carries a dusty scent that reminds you of the desert. You step closer and place your hand gently along its neck. The donkey exhales in a long, slow breath. You feel the rise and fall of its chest. It seems to appreciate the cool air just as deeply as you do. Nearby, A family works quietly around a low wall that encloses their goats for the night. A man checks the thatched roofing, making sure it is open enough to allow airflow but secure enough to keep the goats from wandering. A woman sprinkles fresh straw across the ground, creating a softer layer that will not trap heat. Their daughter pats one of the goats gently, laughing when the animal nudges her hand. You watch the family move with ease, attuned to the needs of their animals. A warm memory from village tradition surfaces as you observe them. Some families believed goats sensed subtle shifts in temperature earlier than humans. When goats sought higher or lower ground at night, people took it as a sign of how the breeze would behave. Whether true or not, the idea reflects how closely animals and humans lived, their breaths blending in the warm Egyptian air. You walk toward a larger enclosure where several cattle rest. They lie side by side, their slow breaths creating a faint, rhythmic sound that hums through the night. A man sits near them on a low stool, watching over his herd. He strokes the head of the closest cow, speaking softly to it. The cow responds with a gentle shake of its ears. You sense a quiet interdependence here. Humans cared for animals, and animals offered labor, milk, protection, or simple companionship. On the far side of the enclosure sits a clay trough filled with water. A boy dips a handful of straw into it, then sprinkles the wet straw over the resting area. The evaporating moisture will offer a cooling effect for both animals and humans. You kneel beside the trough and trail your fingers in the water. It feels surprisingly cool, likely drawn recently from a shaded jar. A faint scent of wet clay rises from the surface. You rise and make your way toward another pen where a few cats roam freely. Their eyes flash in the dim light as they weave between baskets and sleeping mats. Cats flirt with the edges of lamplight like spirits slipping between worlds. One rubs its side against a wooden post before settling to groom itself. You move closer, and the cat lifts its head but does not flee. It blinks slowly at you, accepting your presence. Cats were cherished protectors of stored grain and sleeping spaces, keeping insects and rodents at bay. Their presence alone shaped the comfort of the night. Beyond the cats, you hear a soft rustling from another shelter. You approach cautiously and see several dogs resting together, their bodies curled in loose circles. One dog lifts its head, sniffs the air, then goes back to sleep. A woman nearby kneels to check their water bowl and strokes the largest dog along its back. The dog thumps its tail once in response. These animals offer protection, alerting households to danger or strangers approaching in the dark. Their presence helps families sleep more peacefully. You continue walking until you find a spot where humans and animals share a single courtyard. A family sleeps under a simple canopy, their mats arranged neatly. A donkey rests not far from them, tethered but comfortable. A cat curls near the mother's mat. A few chickens roost overhead. A goat lies close to the child's sleeping space. The arrangement is not chaotic. It is balanced, shaped by familiarity and shared survival. A conversation drifts from the corner where two elders sit watching the animals settle. One suggests sleeping closer to the goats tonight because the breeze flows through that side of the courtyard. The other argues that the donkey produces more body heat, so they should move toward the opposite corner. Their discussion reflects a real practical concern. Animals could bring warmth that comforted or discomforted, depending on the night. Another pair of neighbors approaches the enclosure, discussing insect patterns. They note that animals tend to attract pests, but strong breezes tonight will keep mosquitoes away. One woman mentions that she once placed fragrant herbs near the animals to calm them. The other laughs and remembers a time when her goat preferred to sleep on her own mat. Their voices weave into the night, carrying the warmth of shared memory. You notice a few scattered objects that help manage the balance between animals and people. A bowl of herbs lies near the chickens to reduce pests. A woven fence directs airflow through the donkey's pen. A shade cloth hangs loosely above the goats, catching the breeze. Even the cats, quietly patrolling the courtyard, contribute to the delicate harmony of the night. You walk deeper into the enclosure and sit near the edge of the resting herd. The cow closest to you breathes deeply, releasing warm air that mingles with the cooler breeze. You let your hand rest gently on the ground, feeling the vibrations of the night. Animal pulses, human sounds, rustling leaves, and the distant hush of the river. The sounds blend into something almost musical. A deep low from the cattle, a soft bleat from a goat, a quiet cluck from chickens, a cat's gentle purr, and somewhere far away, a dog barking once before falling silent. These sounds fill the night not as disturbance, but as reassurance. Life continues around you. Nothing feels isolated. You lean back slightly and allow the mixture of warm and cool air to settle over your skin. You understand now that animals shaped not only the day but also the night. They influenced airflow, temperature, sound, and comfort. They were companions, protectors, and participants in the ancient rhythm of rest. As you stand to continue your journey, you cast one last look at the courtyard where humans and animals lie together in peaceful patterns. The night feels deeper, richer, and more connected because of them. You step back onto the path, carrying with you the warm hum of shared breath and quiet harmony that defined countless summer nights along the Nile. You leave the shared courtyard of humans and animals behind, stepping into a narrow lane where the night grows darker and the warmth of the air feels heavier on your skin. A faint tension rises around you, subtle but noticeable, like the desert reminding you that even peaceful nights carry their own risks. The glow of homes grows sparse. The breeze weakens. You sense the shift immediately, as though the village itself is cautioning you to tread more carefully. For all the careful routines Egyptians followed to stay cool, nighttime held moments of danger no one fully ignored. You walk slowly, scanning the edges of the path. The silence here feels different, stretched thin in places. You remember how villagers earlier mentioned sleeping near the river or on rooftops depending on the season, but some avoided certain spots at night because of hazards that emerged only in darkness. These could be wandering animals, desperate thieves, or even shifting winds that sent pockets of hot air rushing unpredictably through open spaces. A detail often mentioned in ancient stories crosses your mind. Nights near the edge of settlements sometimes drew scavenging creatures. Wild dogs, stray jackals, and the occasional snake wandered close to human homes, searching for scraps left behind after meals. Few of these animals sought to harm people, but the sudden appearance of a hungry creature in the dark could startle anyone awake. You pause as you hear a faint rustling from behind a cluster of reed fencing. The noise is soft but irregular. You lean closer, cautious. A moment later, a jackal emerges, its eyes reflecting the faint moonlight. It watches you without fear or aggression, simply alert, as if judging your intentions. After a few still seconds, it slips away into the shadows. Your heartbeat settles, but the encounter reminds you how ancient Egyptian nights balanced beauty with uncertainty. You continue walking, noticing the air moving strangely around a corner. A sudden gust hits your cheek, warm and forceful. The wind shifts direction abruptly, stirring dust into the air. You cover your mouth and step aside as a swirl of hot wind rushes past. These bursts, unpredictable and occasionally intense, could disrupt sleep on open rooftops. Families often moved their mats at the last moment if they sensed a shift in the weather. You lift your face and feel the heat still clinging behind the gust, like an invisible hand refusing to let the day fully fade. Farther down the lane, you see two men standing beside a house, speaking in low but firm voices. One gestures toward the dark desert beyond the walls, explaining that a distant traveler saw footprints near the settlement's edge. The other tightens his grip on a thin staff and nods grimly. They suspect thieves wandering close, searching for unattended pots, grain baskets, or livestock. Such thieves were not common, but the extreme heat sometimes pushed desperate people into risky behavior. Even a simple clay jar had value if a family needed water badly enough. You slip past them quietly, not wanting to intrude on their tense conversation, but you feel their worry lingering behind you, a reminder that the ancient night demanded alertness. Light sleepers often woke at the slightest sound, not always because of discomfort, but because safety depended on awareness. As you walk, the path widens into a small open area where a single lantern burns beside a low wall. A woman sits there with her young son, comforting him. His eyes are wide with fear. She explains softly that he had woken suddenly from a dream, frightened by the sound of something knocking against the house. When you listen closely, you hear it too. A dull, irregular thud followed by a faint scrape. The woman leads you behind the wall and shows the source. A loose clay jar has been shifting in the wind, tapping against the stones. She smiles tiredly, relieved it was nothing worse. Her boy wipes his eyes and leans against her. She strokes his hair and guides him back toward their mat. That tender moment reminds you that danger does not always manifest as frightening creatures. Sometimes it comes in the form of sounds that strain the imagination in the dark. Egyptians knew that nighttime could play tricks on tired minds, especially when heat made sleep shallow. You move on, heading toward an unfinished structure that stands half-built. The wind whistles through its empty windows and gaps where walls are not yet filled with mud brick. You step inside cautiously. The air here feels confused, spiraling unpredictably. Hot drafts collide with cooler breezes, creating a restless mixture. You realize immediately why no one would sleep in such a place. The temperature inside rises and falls sharply from one corner to the next. Even a pile of mats in a half-enclosed room might become suddenly unbearable if the wrong wind pushed through. You leave the structure and follow a faint glow ahead. The light comes from a small rooftop where a man keeps watch with a lantern in hand. He nods as you approach and explains that he is checking the rooftops to ensure children do not sleep too close to the edges. On cooler nights, families sometimes crowded onto rooftops, and the temptation to lay mats near parapets grew strong. But a single misstep in darkness could send someone tumbling to the hard earth below. His job is simple but vital. Make sure no one endangers themselves in pursuit of cooler air. A murmur of voices reaches you. You turn a corner and find a cluster of women standing near a slow-moving animal. A donkey appears restless, pacing and snorting. One woman explains that sudden pockets of hot air can distress certain animals, causing them to wander unpredictably. A restless donkey could wake entire households or knock over important objects. She guides the animal gently, speaking softly until its movements slow. The moment feels small, but revealing. The heat's unpredictability shaped behaviors in subtle ways all across the settlement. Farther along, you hear another sound that makes you pause. A faint scraping across stone, followed by a quick shuffle. You approach silently. A large lizard darts from beneath a broken basket, its claws scraping again before it disappears into a crack in the wall. You exhale softly. The creature was harmless, but its movement could easily have startled someone in the dark. In the distance, another voice rises. A man calls out briefly, then falls silent. You walk toward the sound and see him gesturing to someone inside a house. He warns them that shifting sands have formed a small dune near their back entrance. Such dunes could appear overnight, when desert winds changed. They blocked pathways, trapped cool air, or diverted breezes that families relied on. He uses a wooden shovel to flatten the sand, restoring the airflow. You continue walking until you reach a narrow path lined with tall reeds. They sway back and forth, creating shadows that move like figures walking beside you. The path is especially dark here. Twice you glance over your shoulder, imagining footsteps. But the only sound is the reeds brushing each other. Egyptians understood these shapes and noises, but even they felt unease in places where light did not reach. You reach the end of the path and pause. Behind you lie shifting winds, restless animals, wandering figures, and subtle threats that colored the night. Ahead of you lies the promise of safer ground and quieter moments. You take a slow breath. The warmth clings stubbornly, but you sense the night calming again. You walk forward, leaving behind the edge of danger and stepping once more into the gentler parts of the ancient Egyptian night. You step away from the narrow reed-lined path and find yourself entering a broader clearing where the night breathes a little easier. The air still carries weight, but it no longer presses against your chest with the same insistent heat. You pause, resting your hands at your sides, letting the world settle before you. It is here, in this quiet open space, that you begin to sense how Egyptians managed the worst heat waves of their long summers. Nights like this one, thick and reluctant to cool, forced people to rethink everything about their evening routines. They adapted, improvised, and relied on knowledge passed through countless generations. You walk toward a courtyard where several families have gathered. Their mats lie farther apart than usual, giving each person more room for airflow. Clay jars have been placed in clusters, some half buried, others elevated. A woman gently fans herself with a woven palm leaf, pausing now and then to dip her cloth into a pot of water. A nearby man sprinkles water across the packed earth, encouraging evaporation to cool the ground before people settle in for sleep. A detail well supported by archaeological and environmental studies surfaces in your thoughts. During extreme heat waves, Egyptians relied heavily on evaporative cooling. Not only did clay jars sweat water into the air, but families soaked mats, hung damp linens, and placed bowls of cool water where breezes could catch them. The technique was simple, but immeasurably important when nights hovered unbearably close to daytime temperatures. You move closer to the family using damp mats. A boy presses his hand against one and grins when the cooler fabric meets his skin. His father encourages him to spread the water more evenly across the surface, so the mat dries slowly throughout the night. You watch as the boy proudly obeys, lifting the edges of the mat and smoothing it out with both palms. The movement sends small droplets into the air, and the night breeze carries a faint chill across your arm. Nearby, an elderly woman sits near a large clay pot filled with water. She dips a small cup into it and pours a steady stream over her feet. The relief shows in her expression instantly. She fans her face gently while the water evaporates from her skin. Her daughter sits beside her, using a soaked cloth to dab her arms and neck. The moment feels tender, almost ceremonial. You continue walking and notice another area where several families have constructed simple wind guides. They have arranged palm fronds and woven mats in angled shapes, catching whatever faint breeze moves through the settlement. Even a whisper of airflow can feel like salvation in a heat wave. You step closer and stand behind one of the angled fronds. A breeze passes through, faint but noticeable, enough to cool the air around your face. You watch the frond tremble slightly in the wind. A group of teens stand nearby debating whether to spend the night beside the river or remain on the rooftops. One argues that the humidity near the water might make the heat worse. Another insists that the river breezes always feel cooler. Their disagreement mirrors a topic researchers still explore today, whether riverside humidity relieved or worsened heat stress. The answer depended on the person, the direction of the wind, and the severity of the heat wave. You turn toward the edge of the courtyard where a mother and her son gather a pile of reeds. They use the reeds to weave a temporary cooling mat. She shows him how to leave small gaps between each reed to encourage airflow. The boy concentrates loudly, sticking his tongue out as he threads each piece. When he finishes, she places the mat near a basin of water and lets the breeze drift across it. The scent of fresh reeds fills the air, clean and calming. A father nearby adjusts a long linen sheet so it hangs like a low canopy above the sleeping area. He wets the lower edge of the cloth and lets the droplets drip slowly onto the ground. As the cloth dries, air passes through it and cools. A tiny vibration of chilled wind brushes your cheek. The technique requires discipline and constant attention, especially in extreme heat, but families learned it through trial and memory. The father ties the cloth firmly to two wooden stakes and steps back with satisfaction. You wander toward a group of elders discussing the oppressive heat. One speaks of past summers when temperatures were even worse. Another recalls a year when people slept in shifts all night long, trading places between rooftop breezes and courtyard cool spots. Their conversation reveals another truth. During heat waves, sleep became fragmented. People rested in short bursts, waking whenever their bodies grew too warm, then moving somewhere cooler for another brief stretch of rest. Two young women approach a clay pot that has been soaked in river water. They lift it together and place it near the center of the courtyard. As night air passes around its damp surface, a chill rises subtly, creating a small pocket of cooler temperature. You kneel beside the pot and place your hand near its base. You feel the faint but steady cool breath it gives off. The sensation offers relief even before you touch the clay. Across the courtyard, a man carefully arranges flat stones in a shallow circle. He places a bowl of cool water inside it, explaining to a curious boy that the stones will maintain a slight chill throughout the night. The boy touches one of the stones and gasps softly at the coolness. The man laughs and pats the boy's back. You wander deeper into the gathering and notice piles of thick weeds and dried branches stacked near another family. They burn them slowly in a clay brazier to keep insects away while generating minimal heat. The smell rises in small curls, creating a protective barrier. A girl waves a leaf above the brazier, making the smoke drift toward their sleeping space. Nearby, you spot a rooftop accessible by a short ladder. You climb it carefully and step onto the flat surface. Several adults sit there fanning themselves with large woven palm leaves. The air up here is only slightly cooler, but the elevation helps. One man dips his fan into a bowl of water before fanning himself, sending droplets of cool moisture into the air. A woman repeats the action on her sleeping mat, letting the water fall evenly across it. You sit with them for a moment, feeling the warmth and the small relief that follows each breeze. The woman beside you explains that in the worst heat waves, families sometimes took turns staying awake to ensure everyone remained hydrated. She gestures toward a jar of fresh water nearby, refilled earlier from the coolest storage space they had. A distant shout from below draws your attention. Someone calls that the breeze has grown stronger. People stir across the rooftops and courtyards. Hopeful. You feel it too. A slightly cooler current moves through your hair and across your arms. It is not much, but in a heat wave, even a small shift can change the entire night. You rise to your feet and let the breeze move through you. The heat no longer feels quite as heavy. The sound of quiet conversation softens. A few people begin settling for sleep, relieved at last. You look across the rooftops and courtyards and see families adjusting mats, dipping cloths in water, repositioning beds, and whispering thanks to the dark sky above. You stand quietly for a few moments, watching the ancient community breathe together through the worst of the heat. Their resilience shows not through grand inventions, but through countless small gestures woven into the rhythm of their nights. At last you step away from the rooftop and walk into the slowly cooling air, ready to follow the final stretch of the Egyptian night. You step away from the rooftop where the faint breeze finally began to stir, and drift toward the quietest edge of the settlement. The night has softened, though the warmth still clings to your skin. You feel the air settling into its slow descent, like a giant creature exhaling after a long, heated day. This is the final stretch of the Egyptian night, when families finish their rituals, when tired animals curl into the straw, and when the world finally allows itself to grow still. You move along a winding path bordered by small clusters of palms. Their leaves sway gently, brushing each other in a whisper you have come to recognize as one of the night's kindest sounds. Ahead, a group of families prepares for sleep beneath open sky. Mats lie in loose semicircles. Clay jars stand near each sleeping space. The scent of herbs and cooling oils lingers faintly in the air. You approach quietly, not wanting to disturb their final preparations. A mother adjusts a linen sheet over her daughter, smoothing the edges with delicate hands. The girl is already drifting, her eyelids fluttering as the breeze touches her cheeks. A father nearby lowers a woven screen to shield his sleeping spot from any sudden gusts of warm wind. He steps back, tests the airflow with the back of his hand, and nods. The ritual feels gentle, practiced, and filled with affection. A detail frequently mentioned in studies of ancient Egyptian rest habits returns to your thoughts. Most families did not treat sleep as a single long stretch but as a shifting sequence. They rested in cycles, moved if the heat grew too strong, woke briefly to reposition mats, drank small amounts of water, then drifted back into dreams. The night was alive and flexible. People flowed with it rather than resisting. As you continue watching, a young boy climbs up a short ladder to join his parents on their rooftop. His hair catches the moonlight. He carries a small clay doll tucked beneath his arm. He places it beside his mat and lies down, rolling onto his side. His mother strokes his hair once before, settling beside him. The rooftop becomes still, holding the soft sound of their breaths. Nearby, an elderly couple sits talking in quiet murmurs. They lift their faces toward the sky, pointing out faint constellations they have followed their entire lives. The man traces a cluster of stars with his finger, explaining how the season is turning. The woman nods thoughtfully, adding her own memories. Their voices blend with the rustle of distant palms, creating a lullaby shaped by memory and wind. You step toward the far edge of the rooftop and let your gaze fall over the entire settlement. Oil lamps flicker in a few remaining courtyards. A handful of people finish their nightly tasks. A woman closes her storage door. A man ties the last knot on a woven reed fence. Another sprinkles water onto the ground for a final breath of coolness before lying down. These small motions feel like the last strokes of a paintbrush completing a mural of rest. A soft discussion drifts from a corner where two neighbors speak about the day's relentless heat. One believes the next night will be cooler because the breeze arrived earlier than expected. The other remains unsure, noting slight shifts in the air that remind her of hotter seasons. Their voices carry a sense of gentle uncertainty that echoes the questions scholars still ask today. How accurately could Egyptians predict nightly cooling based on winds, stars, or seasonal patterns? No one fully agrees, and perhaps prediction mattered less than preparedness and instinct. You kneel beside an unoccupied mat and rest your hand on its woven surface. The reed fibers feel warm at first, but cooler beneath the top layer. You imagine lying here, letting the coolness spread along your spine, feeling heat slowly leave your body as the night draws forward. You picture yourself adjusting your position when a sudden warm gust drifts through, then sinking deeper into rest when the air cools once more. A soft grunt breaks your thoughts. You turn and see a dog circling near its family's sleeping area. It kneads the ground with its paws, then lies down in a perfect curl beside a clay jar. Its ears twitch at distant sounds, but its breathing soon steadies. Even animals feel the night easing. A young woman approaches with a small bowl of scented water. She dips her fingers into it and dabs her wrists, neck, and temples. She inhales deeply, then pours the remaining droplets onto the ground beside her mat. The aroma rises briefly before the night swallows it. She lies down, adjusting her hair so the breeze can reach her neck. In the dim corner of a courtyard, a man sits sharpening a reed pen, taking advantage of the last quiet minutes before he rests. He sets his tools aside and stretches his arms upward. He lifts his face toward the sky and closes his eyes, breathing slowly. He seems to absorb the night's final calm before lying down on his mat. A group of children finally settles, their whispered conversations dissolving into sleepy hums. One child rolls onto her stomach, letting the air touch her back. Another tugs a thin linen cloth over his shoulder. Their quiet murmurs fade into the hum of insects. You stand and walk slowly across the courtyard, feeling the night take on a different texture. Everything begins to hush. Breezes pass more softly, carrying a faint coolness that did not exist an hour ago. Conversations quieten. Lamps burn lower. Reeds stir gently. Even the river in the distance seems to soften its sound. You pause once more and take in the sight of the rooftops. Families lie together in loose circles. Some face the stars, some face the breeze, some curl around their children. Some stretch their limbs to shed the day's heat. Their silhouettes look peaceful, softened by moonlight and drifting air. You feel the night deepen, becoming almost liquid in its calm. The world grows slow, quiet, and tender. Ancient Egypt settles into a shared breath, preparing for the final descent into sleep. The warmth of the night now feels distant, softened by the whisper of breeze that flows calmly through the settlement. You walk slowly, almost drifting, letting each step grow quieter than the last. The lanterns fade into faint glows. The shadows deepen, but lose all sharpness. Everything becomes rounded, softened, safe. You pause beside a low wall and lean gently against it. The mud brick is warm, but no longer burning. It holds only a memory of the day. Above you, the stars seem to breathe with the earth, pulsing faintly in their slow, ancient rhythm. The air moves across your face in long, low strokes, like the night reassuring you it is finally time to rest. Families lie across rooftops and courtyards, their breaths rising and falling in the same slow cadence. Linen sheets ripple faintly with each passing breeze. Clay jars glimmer in the moonlight. Mats shift quietly beneath sleeping bodies. Even the animals have fallen still. A dog sighs. A goat settles deeper into straw. A cat curls into a warm, silent knot. You take one more step, then another, as if floating through the final curtain of the night. The scents of herbs, lotus, and river air blend together into something impossibly gentle. The sounds fade, until only the softest rustles remain. You feel the world lowering its voice, dimming its edges, smoothing its textures. When you close your eyes, the desert cools around you, the river hums softly in the distance, and the sky drapes over you like a blanket woven from starlight and wind. You let your breath fall into the rhythm of the ancient night. Slow, easy, quiet. Sleep settles across Egypt, and soon it settles over you too.